With the president still talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case, the Justice Department is busy trying to keep his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, from successfully appealing her conviction on sex offenses involving minors. In a brief filed with the Supreme Court yesterday, the DOJ argued that her claim that Epstein's 2007 plea deal should have also covered her is both incorrect and unlikely to succeed in, quote, any appeals court. For more on her actual role up to this point, here's CNN's Randy Kay.
Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old.
Ghislaine Maxwell, a friend and former lover of Jeffrey Epstein's. She dated the accused sex trafficker in the 1990s, and the two remained close. Federal investigators accused Maxwell of serving as Epstein's madam, recruiting young girls for Epstein to abuse, and taking part in the abuse herself.
She pretended to be a woman they could trust. All the while, she was setting them up to be sexually abused by Epstein, and in some cases, by Maxwell herself.
Long before that, Maxwell had a privileged life in the English countryside where she grew up. She's the daughter of Czech-born newspaper tycoon Robert Maxwell, who died in 1991 after falling off his luxury yacht near the Canary Islands. Multiple people say Maxwell introduced Epstein to affluent social circles. Maxwell's own exclusive circle included then future President Donald Trump, seen together here in this photo from 2000. Alongside him, Melania, who he was dating at the time, and Jeffrey Epstein. That's Maxwell in the background of this photograph of Prince Andrew, with Virginia Roberts, who later became Virginia Giuffre. She had alleged she was trafficked by Epstein with the help of Maxwell and forced to have sex with Prince Andrew when she was 17. The prince emphatically denied all of it and settled Giuffre's lawsuit against him for an undisclosed amount. Giuffre died earlier this year by suicide.
Breaking news just into CNN. A longtime Jeffrey Epstein confidant and friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, has been arrested.
In July of 2020, the year after Epstein took his life in jail, Maxwell was arrested in New Hampshire. She was charged with 6 federal counts, including 1 count of sex trafficking children. She pleaded not guilty, yet at her 2021 trial, 4 women alleged that Epstein sexually abused them and that Maxwell not only helped facilitate, but also participated in some of the abuse between 1994 and 2004. The women were under 18 at the time. Maxwell was found guilty of 5 of the 6 charges against her, including the most serious charge of sex trafficking a girl named Carolyn when she said she was just 14 years old. Carolyn had told the court she participated in sexualized massages with Epstein and recruited other young girls for him. Carolyn recalled how Maxwell groped her naked body, telling her she had a great body for Epstein and his friends. In court, the defense tried to portray Maxwell as a scapegoat.
Clever and cunning to the end, Jeffrey Epstein left Ghislaine Maxwell holding the whole bag.
Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, but appealed her sex trafficking conviction. For now, Maxwell will continue serving time here in Florida. She's behind bars at FCI Tallahassee, a low-security federal correctional institution with a detention center. Her scheduled release date, July 17, 2037. Randy Kay, CNN, Palm Beach County, Florida.
Well, for more on all this, how all this is being viewed inside the Department of Justice and the FBI, I'm joined by CNN senior law enforcement analyst and former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. What do you make of the Justice Department's argument to the Supreme Court for why they shouldn't take up Maxwell's appeal? Because at the core of Maxwell's petition, she's arguing that the government's non-prosecution agreement with Epstein as part of his 2007 plea deal also applies to her.
Sure, Anderson. So the government's position is it relies on a bit of a technicality here. The actual language from the non-pros agreement signed in 2008 by Jeffrey Epstein basically says if Epstein successfully fulfills all the terms and conditions of the agreement, the United States, now note, not specifically, doesn't say just the Southern District of Florida or the entirety of the United States, also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including but not limited to 4 of Epstein's assistants. So she is claiming that she comes within the protection of that clause. The the Department of Justice saying, no, we had an internal policy at the time that said if a specific district gives you a non-pros agreement, it applies only in that district, which means the Southern District that came through in 2019 or 2020 indicting Epstein and Maxwell was not bound by this exclusive agreement.
The situation between Bongino and Pam Bondi, have you ever seen anything like it, and is that tenable?
No, absolutely not tenable. I've never seen anything like this. The idea that a deputy director of the FBI would confront the attorney general in the White House in front of other people and they'd get involved in some sort of a shouting match, making accusations about each other. I can't even imagine that ever happening. And if it did happen, I'm shocked that the attorney general hasn't already removed him from his position. It's a level of disrespect and disarray among the leadership of those two agencies that's really just a terrible thing, terrible example for the workforce.
It sounds like there's a lot more there are a lot more files that could be released if the government wanted to. Do you think that's likely to happen?
I think it's unlikely to happen. I think there's probably a lot of information in there that they really cannot release because it's protected by grand jury secrecy rules or maybe Privacy Act concerns, or maybe it's confidential witness testimony that witnesses requested protection from. So there are probably a lot of legitimate reasons why some of this information they can't release, not the least of which is that just releasing the names of people who happen to be in Jeffrey Epstein's phone book without any indication that they were involved in some sort of criminal activity would be pretty defamatory and destructive to those people's reputation. So there's a lot of legitimate limits on what they can release. And at this point, whatever they put out is never going to satisfy the conspiracy crowd.
Andrew McCabe, thanks very much.
It's not that hard, and we will do so in a little while, to find recent tape of the now FBI director, the now deputy FBI director, the now attorney general that he put in place, promising that when they get into office, they will find out the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. And now he is using the power that he hopes he still has to say nothing to see here, that it's a hoax, that it's all the Democrats. He has been successful in trying to do that in the past and say, don't look here, look over here, to members of his base. But so far, he has not been successful on this issue. Kristen?
Yeah, Dan, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. Just because President Trump himself wasn't the biggest proponent or perpetuator of these Epstein conspiracy theories, he did put three of the most vocal people who had said that they wanted to release this list into top jobs within his administration, of course, being Attorney General Pam Bondi. People who have been waiting for the release of this list. See how much angrier he's getting by the minute over this Epstein coverage. He said, my past supporters have bought into this, quote, bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success because I don't want their support anymore. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, a couple of things to note here. This isn't just some fringe part of his base. There is a huge part of his base that believes that there are Epstein files that need to be released. We saw that when Charlie Kirk held his seminar over the weekend in Florida, and there were thousands upon thousands of people there cheering to release the files, cheering for Dan Bongino. You are seeing a real break here in the MAGA movement. Now, the question is, as you said, do they fall in line eventually? And we just simply don't know the answer to that right now. But I just want to read you a couple of the things he said in that meeting, because some of these are just so deeply insulting to the people who put him in office. He said at one point that foolish Republicans have fallen into the net of this Democratic, as he called it, Epstein hoax. He said at one point, I have lost a lot of faith in certain people who he said had pushed the Epstein, quote, hoax. This is what he's calling it. He said Republicans got duped by Democrats. At one point, he said stupid Republicans and stupid people are focused on this. He also noted that if there was anything credible left to release, that the Attorney General should release it, any kind of documents, and he praised Pam Bondi's handling of all of this. But if you listen to those words there, and you go back and you watch the tape of who exactly it was who was helping propel this messaging around Epstein, those are the people who got him elected, Dana. Those are the people who were out there every day on their podcasts, on various different shows, reaching out to parts of the country that were usually untapped for voters. Yep. Those are those people. And they reached those people, and they got them out to the polls, and they had an unprecedented win with certain voting blocks. And now you hear President Trump saying that these are stupid people who were duped, and that is clearly not going to sit well, despite where this ends, because obviously we can't, again, predict where this goes. But that is not the message that these people who helped him get elected want to hear.
He's telling off his own supporters, just to put it bluntly. That is what he is doing.
I want to bring in Brian Tyler Cohen. I hope you've checked him out online. He's got a huge digital audience on YouTube, and for good reason. Smart and really part of the progressive movement of the left. We'll see what that's going to become. Brian, it's good to be with you. Why
Chris,
are you so interested in the Epstein situation? You, of all people. Why do you care about this story?
I know it's not usually my beat here, but I think it's actually the perfect instance to show what a con this has all been as far as these Trump supporters are concerned. I mean, these guys spent, whether it's Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Alina Habba, Donald Trump, spent all of this time promising their supporters something. They used it to gain power for themselves. And the moment that they're actually in government, that they have the opportunity to substantiate the very claims that they themselves were making, they immediately do an about face, leave their supporters high and dry. And it's the perfect microcosm for everything that they do, because Trump has promised so many things to his supporters. He's promised a healthcare plan that was cheaper and more comprehensive. He's promised an an infrastructure law. He promised a jobs boom, a manufacturing renaissance. They keep promising all these things. That was the first term. The second term, they promised lower prices for groceries, lower prices for eggs, housing, rent. The only thing they ever give themselves is a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. That's it. That is their priority. But they have to say whatever they got to say to string the rubes along. And this is the perfect example of that backfiring on them, because they found something that their supporters clearly care a lot about, and it's not going to be as easy for them to just pretend like there's no there.
So the opportunity is that there are people who are disillusioned, and therefore they may become a little bit more open to a different message. So you got to be in the business of better on the other side, because you're not going to shame them into wanting to vote for you. Like, see what you did with Trump? Now you better vote for us. That's not going to work. You never blame the voter. So then it gets into, well, what is the message that's being projected? I felt that this was a great opportunity. Horrible situation, but often there's opportunity. Attacks on the ICE agents was a chance for a Newsom, anybody, AOC, anybody who wants to be a leader on the big stage, to come forward and say, no, this isn't who we are. And that's what we criticized about the extremists at the far fringe of MAGA. And none of them have taken that opportunity, Brian. I am shocked at the lack of coverage in the media, but also no lefty. AOC opened up her pie hole about Epstein, but not about the ICE attacks.
Well, I think that, politically speaking, it's pretty clear why. If you look at the new Gallup poll that was released today, Trump's approval on immigration is completely underwater. He's 35 to 62. There is a record high approval of immigration itself, 79 to 17 overall. 78% of Americans that responded support a pathway to citizenship. That's up almost 10 points from 2024. Only 38% support mass deportation. That's down 9 points from 2024. And so you look at these numbers, and it's clear where the majority of Americans are on this. And I think that's owed to a few reasons. As it relates to ICE specifically, I mean, this is the kind of thing that anybody in America would look at happen in another country and say, this is clearly the result of some autocratic authoritarian regime run amok. These guys have no insignia. They're not identifying themselves. They're grabbing people and throwing them into trucks. They're effectively kidnapping people here. And moreover, this is not something that Trump had a mandate to do. He promised that he would be deporting hardened criminals. He's going out into fields, finding people that are picking the food we eat, harvesting the crops that we need for this country, going into construction sites and plucking people out of jobs where they're building the homes that we all live in. I mean, this is not at all what he promised. And so clearly, from a political perspective, there's no mandate for him to do this.
No, I'm with you. I'm just saying that you're blowing the advantage when you don't call out people who try to kill the agents enforcing the laws.
Look,
that's all I'm saying.
I understand that, and I'm not. The last thing I'm going to do is advocate for any violence on any side. So that caveat notwithstanding, but I do think that, you know, at least from look, these guys they're politicians first and foremost, and so if you just look at the numbers right in front of us, it's very clear where the wind is blowing.
I got you. I got to jump. Brian Tyler Cohen, you're always welcome to be here. People should check you out on YouTube. You got a massive audience for good reason. Thank you, brother. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
So are there reasonable conclusions to be drawn here? And is this a messaging problem? Did they overpromise before they knew what the documents would show? Here to weigh in is Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president, and Molly Hemingway, the Federalist editor-in-chief and Fox News contributor. Tom, here's what Kash Patel said about that Epstein client list shortly after he was nominated as FBI director. Watch.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list? Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Tom, he sounded pretty definitive there. So what changed?
I think they decided for political purposes they didn't want to include the individuals who are on these lists and put them in the public domain. And they were concerned that some of them may not have done something warranting the disclosure. I mean, that's the most charitable interpretation. You know, but there is a list. There's no doubt. I mean, they talk about in the memo they wrote, well, there's no incriminating client list. Well, what does that mean? I want the non-incriminating client list. And of course, a client list is a term of art, right? Where are his associates? Where is the list of contacts? You know, and we asked under our FOIA lawsuit, Pam Bondi, give us the documents that you say you were looking at. Give us documents about the release of these documents. You said the FBI was obstructing the release. They came back to us and said, we have nothing.
Molly.
Well, this is a proxy for what we've seen with so many big stories throughout the years where the American people just want to know what's going on with assassination attempts, you know, whether it's the one in Butler on Trump or the one that was successful against JFK, the Russia collusion hoax, the situation with Epstein. Everyone understands that there might not be a, you know,
smoking gun.
Right, but no one feels very satisfied with the level of investigation that was taking place or the transparency. And it seems that the FBI and other government agencies care more about managing the narrative than actually just revealing the information that needs to be revealed.
Then we have interviews with former mobsters who actually was in the same jail as Epstein and had kind of a shocking claim. Watch.
Jeffrey Epstein would have to be a magician to try to hang himself in that cell. I was in that cell. There's no way there's nothing on the ceiling. The bedpost is this high. I couldn't even go to a restroom without them walking back and forth and having me on camera. You know, there's no way he committed suicide.
Tom.
You know, and Pam Bondi yesterday said that video they released isn't conclusive.
But it's a reset. That minute is a regular reset of the system.
And they're still looking for that minute. And to release video that doesn't show what happened in the cell isn't terribly persuasive. I'm not sure what they were expecting there. The fact is there are two competing forensic investigations, one by Epstein's family, which suggests that it was a homicide, and one by the examiner up in New York. He says it was a suicide. So given those issues, to say because the video doesn't show one way or the other whether someone went in there, to conclude, oh, well, there's nothing to investigate, seems odd. And they also said, we're not going to give you any more documents. And kind of with this, well, there are too many conspiracy theories out there. And I don't like to be dissed like that. And Americans, I think by and large, have questions about Epstein. And to be told that,
Yeah.
you know,
He
we've
said
got
that.
all...
I think Kash Patel made that point like a year before being nominated, but still, I mean, I think this all adds to the swirl of a bit of confusion about this and doubt. And again, the government only, I think, engenders trust among the American people with full transparency. So when Pam Bondi, and everyone knows how much I like Pam Bondi, I like her a lot. But when she says, well, those are basically never going to see the light of day. But who, was it downloaded child porn? Or were there individuals engaged in acts with children? That's the question, I think. And unless either of you know what the definitive answer is, I don't know.
I mean, they talk about 1,000 victims. I mean, so was Epstein the only victimizer for that number of victims? I don't think so.
Well, just again, in general, there has not been the appropriate level of information shared. We know that the guy, I mean, maybe he didn't kill himself, or maybe he did. Why? Why was he in prison? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell still in prison? Why are all these people talking this way? There's no way that we've gotten a clear enough explanation of what's going on. How did he make his money? How did he get associations with so many high-level people? People are willing to accept any number of answers, but they need to be treated like adults in the communications.
Well, this is a sticky wicket they have in front of them. Tom and Molly, both of you, thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Also breaking tonight, a feud at the Justice Department over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. A source tells Fox News tonight that the FBI Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, has not been seen in the office since Wednesday after a heated argument with Attorney General Pam Bondi at the White House. Our correspondent David Spunt has this story.
A verbal clash between Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino at the White House this week over the release of DOJ's Epstein memo. The two-pager out earlier this week insists the convicted sex trafficker and offender killed himself, and a client list does not exist after all. Fox is told by 4 separate sources Bongino is so upset about the rollout of the memo, he didn't show up to work on Friday in protest. One source says he hasn't been seen in the office since the argument with the Attorney General. Bondi teased the release of the Epstein material for months.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
But earlier this week, when pressed,
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
The White House is defending the Attorney General. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in a statement to Fox News, says the president is proud of Bondi's efforts, adding the continued fixation on sowing division in President Trump's cabinet is baseless and unfounded in reality. FBI Director Kash Patel staying silent in the matter, at least publicly. He's been criticized online, along with Bondi and Bongino, by Trump supporters who feel the administration is being dismissive and not candid about Epstein.
A source close to Bongino says he's thinking about resigning over this memo rollout, although no final decision has been made. Meanwhile, sources close to Director Patel and the Attorney General say they plan to stay right where they are. Aisha?
Okay, David Spunt staying on top of this one for us. Thank you, David.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the death?
Yeah, sure. If
could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Chris Cuomo joins me now. You're about to speak with Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark, about that DOJ and FBI report. Mark does not believe that Jeffrey committed suicide.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to him. I've spoken to him before, and he wasn't really close with his brother, and I never knew how much of that was convenience because he didn't want to get painted with the same stink. But for him to hold on that he believes something happened to his brother, which is what he told me at the time, I want to know what his basis is. And look, the administration did themselves no favor here. Bondi saying, I got the list right here, I got it right here, and leading people to believe that. You know, now they reap what they sow. But look, you know how I feel about this. This is a grand distraction. It's just that it was so central to so many who are MAGA enthusiasts. And it's interesting to see, you know, what is starting to splinter the fringe on the right. And that's what tonight's about.
Well, it was also central to several people who are inside the Trump administration right now. Dan Bongino, Kash Patel. Yeah, but don't confuse what somebody says on a podcast with what they're going to say when they're going to be held accountable. Exactly.
It's one thing when you're looking for clicks and following and to feed conspiracies and all these other things that make you money. It's another thing when you have to take account. Right. And that's why Kash Patel and Bongino and Bobby and all the other ones have really changed their tune.
All right, Chris, I'm looking forward to it. Have a great show.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you very much. Chris Cuomo here. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Welcome to News Nation, where right and left come to be reasonable. It's tough to do that tonight. We just finished celebrating our country, right? The birth of we the people. Not us and them, not me, we. But even on the 4th of July, we saw how weak some are making us. Why did the flooding in Texas immediately become a blame game on social media? What happened to just mourning the dead in a natural disaster, spreading awareness of what is needed by the communities and how you can help, just pulling for the rescue of the missing? Can't anything escape the prism of partisan advantage? Forget about me saying we're going to expose the game, see the game. Forget about the game. Feel the shame. This is disgusting. I don't even know if we're a country anymore. What brings us together? What is our common concern? We're just dueling factions of fanatics. There's no more of this. We're not a fist. We're just fickle fingers looking for triggers to pull, literally and figuratively. You got 109 or whatever the number is right now, dead in Texas. The number's going to go up. 160 missing. How is this not just a point of empathy and sympathy? Children's dead bodies being recovered all day Saturday. And then this Houston pediatrician writes, may all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry. Are you effing kidding me? They deny climate change? I mean, since when is death not more important than your politics? Even if you think policy, decisions, rhetoric, leaders had something to do with the outcome, why does it become tantamount to that outcome? Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, I've been trying to get him on the show. Now I don't want him. Accurate weather forecasting helps avoid fatal disasters. That's what you say? There are consequences to attacking meteorologists? You really believe that that's what this was about? You really think that's what your constituents want? For you to take a cheap shot at dead kids to score points against Trump? Wow. And guess what? The Union for the National Weather Service, and they've been critical of Trump's cuts, and I'm not saying there's not reason for criticism, but it's about perspective. The union says there was adequate staff at the time in Texas, and meteorologists are not faulting the National Weather Service. They're noting that they began to escalate the flood warnings as much as 12 hours in advance of the floods. So shut up, Murphy. We have to see that the interests of the many are being held hostage by the obsessions of the few on both sides. They are killing us. One day after the floods, a name I wish I never knew, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, said that it was intentional, the flooding. It's the dangerous and deadly practice of cloud seeding. Only psychos play with this kind of conspiracy, in my experience. I can't believe one is a member of Congress. They've been seeding clouds for decades. Minutes later, this Republican congressional candidate posts fake weather, fake hurricanes, fake flooding, fake. I mean, man, you talk about pick-me energy. And if you think I'm taking it too far, okay, or that there's false parity, false equivalency, that needs to die. Okay? The constant division and extreme partisan hectoring and hostility is absolutely a catalyst for violence. Look at the recent attacks. The facts make my case. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about which side is yours and that you've bought into this false investment of superiority over some other side because you think they're crap. They've all been politically motivated. Even as the floods raged and we were celebrating the 4th of July, just a few hours north in Texas, American young males and females, no yalla, okay, no beards and turbans and all the other silly stereotypes of bad guys, American-made terrorists ambushing an ICE facility in Texas. They were there to kill ICE agents on Independence Day. Look at this. Oh, but the college campuses was... These are here. This is what it is. This is what is driving the populism on the left. Americans acting like ISIS, wearing all-black military-style clothing, drawing the ICE agents out with fireworks and antics. And then when they came out, they had a guy positioned with an Armalite-style rifle, shooting them, spraying bullets. They found the rifles, the clips, the body armor, the two-way radios, the Faraday bag, to block signals. This is it, man. This isn't some random thing. Fight ICE terror with class war. Free all political prisoners. Resist fascism. Fight oligarchy. Oh, where did I hear that before? Oh, yeah, the AOC and Bernie rallies. You're not blaming them? No, I'm not blaming them personally. I actually think AOC and Bernie both care about the middle class. I don't agree with their remedies. I think socialism is political suicide in a capitalist economy in America. That's not the point. They and others on the left fringe have ratcheted up the hatred for Trump and his administration and ICE and DOJ. And you know it. It's not just that they're bad policy, that they're bad moves, that they're bad appointments. It's that they're bad people, that they are immoral, that they are evil, that they deserve bad things to happen to them. It sounds more like they want to put down a rabid dog than that they have a political disagreement. And this is where extreme talk leads. Just like with Trump and other fringe fanatics trafficking in extremism, I'm not calling him a fanatic, but he has fanatics that hear what he says. I think the president is one of the best instinctual political animals I've ever seen in my experience. His ability to not just read a room, but read a reality. The grievance is real. He tapped into it. He knew what would make people believe, and he is doing what he told them and you that he would do. But the hot talk, the making everybody an enemy, it is making us crazy. The parties have been consumed by extremism. The system is toxic. Yes, they are the few, not the many. And if the majority would just come out and brave this situation and condemn it and say, we want reasonable. I'm going to reward reasonable. I'm going to shout down anything else. I'm going to tell you to shut up. It's not what I voted for. The extremists will become the sideshow where they belong. The best contribution Elon has made to this administration is pitching changing the political system to add parties. The two-party system is toxic and rife with extreme talk and tactics. It must be changed. And before you tell me again with the false equivalency, the Democrats aren't the same as MAGA. What Democrats? You mean the populist movement on the left that is the MAGA mirror? Where are the Democratic leaders talking about the attack on ICE? Where's AOC? Where's Bernie? You can't shut them up. But now they don't have anything they want to say, right? Why? Because it's all about advantage all the time, and they think if they ignore it, there'll be no connection. The talk is toxic. And this is not about denying the legitimacy of the outrage in America. All right? It is real, it is justified, and I believe it's getting worse. I get why many wanted Trump to do what he promised to do during the election, even if I disagree with the policies and the impact of the rhetoric. And there is as much righteousness coming at him as he is sending out. The economy is not as promised in large part because of what Trump has forced. And no, I don't measure our reality by Wall Street. Investors are still the minority. Main Street matters. People are suffering. Strong businesses that are small and that we need are being compromised. Deportations are way more than just scooping up bad hombres. The way they're doing it and where they're doing it and how often they're doing it has become aggressive and oppressive. It risks hurting communities and demonizing all when the problem is some. But using violence against the agents? ICE agents have been under constant threat this year. Assaults are up almost 700%. So, back in Central Texas, we see something that I see all the time, covering tragedies in this country. Worst of times brings out the best of us. And you're seeing that. The local community, the Americans that come from all over the country. One of my buddies here volunteered to go down and help FEMA stay safe while doing their job. But you have to look at the full scope. You got to see the people who are celebrating dead Trumpers. You got to see the people who are scamming people whose kids are missing. Calling the families of missing kids, telling them they found their kid and demanding money to return them. Get pissed at that. Savage that. Savage the people who have forgotten their humanity, who have forgotten the only pronoun that matters in this country, who have forgotten the signature command, the golden rule as delivered by who we always thought was the president to kind of hold up as the first because he set the standard in Washington until Trump said that he's better than him. Be a country, that is all. You cannot look at what is happening and think that we are not killing ourselves. Now, let's deal with what matters as a function of collective concern. Who's being found? What is happening with search and rescue, and how much of it is now believed to be recovery? News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton has been in Texas covering this situation as it develops, and he is now in a very interesting situation, taking us to a big part of the reality. Brian, thank you for being there. What do you got for us?
Yeah, Chris, these search and rescue crews, they just cleared out 8 o'clock. They've been working so hard all day. It's hot. The conditions are terrible. This is the Guadalupe River. This is where they've been focused in this area, but we're about 20 miles from Camp Mystic, where those girls went missing, searching all the brush, pulling the trees back, pulling back the branches. They think that, you know, there could be people in this area hidden beneath the water. And I want to show you, Chris, the water, when it flooded here, it was up over my head. This is a quarry. And the concern is that there could be people in this waterway. There's not normally water here, so what they're doing right now is they're pumping the water out. It's gonna take all night long, but they're hoping to get the water out overnight, and then they can search the quarry. And they're concerned that when the water was rushing, remember it was 45 feet up, it was a tidal wave, that some of these people may actually be in this quarry right now, Chris.
I mean, they got to be somewhere, right, brother? I mean, and that is the, you know, that is the horrid reality, is that they didn't just disappear. And of course, they're going to have another phenomenon that they're going to have to deal with down there, is that as the temperatures keep going up, Brian, they're going to have bodies that are there are going to start coming up, and they're going to start making themselves more apparent. So there's a lot of this story still left to tell. Thank you for being there. Send our best to everybody and let us know what they need, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, 161 people missing. I mean, it's a staggering number.
Yeah, no, it'll change, and you'll be there for it. Thank you very much. All right, so look, that's the job. Brian's doing it, right? And that's all that should matter. Not, you know, this is Trump's fault, right? Oh, you know, this is government. Government sucks. They set these people up. Government is another reason to get rid of that agency. So let's take a clear-eyed look at what happened here, what can be learned, and what doesn't matter. Let's bring in former Kerr County Commissioner Tom Moser, okay? He knows the situation. He knows the reality. In fact, they had a similar flash flood 8 years ago, and he actually had a fix in mind, but it was too expensive. And the president for the Austin Firefighters Association, Bob Nix. Now, he has entered the fray of controversy here because he accused the Austin Fire Chief, who happens to be black, of not sending resources fast enough, which he says cost lives. Nix says he is now being accused of making this a political MAGA stunt. Look, gentlemen, thank you for being here. I just want to talk about what matters and what we can learn here, and what we see. And Mr. Moser, you know it best because you lived it and you saw it from a leadership position. Are you surprised by what's happening here, and what is the message for you?
Chris, absolutely surprised. It'll be interesting to see somebody do a probability analysis on the probability of something like this happening. It's probably going to be 1 in a million or something like that. It'll be interesting. Somebody will do it. In 2015, there was a major flood event south of Kerrville in Wimberley, Texas, where a family perished because of high-rising water, and they were washed away in a rental home. We'd never had that, to my knowledge, in Kerrville, but after that event down in Wimberley, they set up an early warning system for the river rising and sounding alarms. I looked at that and took that idea and expanded on it, took it back to Kerr County and presented it to the other commissioners, city councilmen, and about 30 or 40 other people in the community, with an idea of setting up a early warning system for a major flood, not just something that is to be considered in the hill country, but a major flood. And
You there,
and
Mr.
we
Moser?
talked about that, and the community did not want. Yeah, the community did not
finish
want
your point,
sirens.
please.
Okay, I will. So, community did not want sirens, so we had a plan and we executed what we could.
So, just Mr. Moser, just kind of at bottom, when you look at this situation, do you see this as a function of blame, or do you believe that this was a natural catastrophe that no matter what you had, it was going to be terrible?
I absolutely believe the latter. It was a natural catastrophe, no matter what we did. Okay, could we have saved more lives? Perhaps, and probably so.
Mr. Nix, I don't know why I said, I want you to answer this question for me. Yes, the chief is black. Is that relevant to you in your criticism?
No, absolutely not. Nothing to do with it.
Well, then I apologize for making it a detail of the description. Not that it's, to be apologized for whatever race somebody is, but what is the issue for you with the chief?
We want to make sure the truth comes out. I mean, our chief, we're part of Texas Task Force 1 that responds routinely across the state of Texas to take care of our broader community. And we are really the experts on swiftwater rescue in the Hill Country, including Kirk County. Our fire chief, under some misguided notion he's going to save money, put a no deployment order into the fire department where we cannot accept any deployments. And then when he was interviewed today, he said it was because he was trying to teach the bean counters that we need to get our reimbursements faster. He's literally putting lives on the line for no reason at all. And our firefighters in Austin are some of the best boat crews and rescue swimmers in the state. We're all go. We'll put our lifeline every day to help citizens. And a fellow from the commissioner's correct. This is a once in 100-year event. But we would have been pre-deployed the day before water even hit, reconning the area, checking out the places need to be helped. And our firefighters were not allowed because the fire chief basically said from June 6th on, no deployments and don't even ask. And we turned down two assignments, and it's just I've never seen anything like this in my career. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris.
Bob, what do you think of the damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario? I know that first responders are ready to go. You are the angels among us. Nobody's going to dispute that point, certainly not on this show. But, if you put you guys out there and it's not worth it, it's a waste of money. If they put you out there and God forbid something happens, you shouldn't have been in harm's way. And that, the chief was in a no-win situation. Is that a fair defense?
No, because if he wouldn't have had the moratorium on deployments, we routinely say yes, these deployments, as we should, as part of our promise and contract to the state, that we deploy when they need us. And the way emergency service works, a lot of civilians may not realize this, but if you react to the event when it happens, you're 8 hours behind. So pre-deploying resources is a very common technique for rescuers to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been with you guys so many times, the different FEMA teams, and I get it. And I get that you want to be there so that you're not coming into it spontaneously and having to figure out your bearings and your logistics. I get it. I would just caution you that, this is a sensitive time and everything's going to be received that well. But I didn't mean to make it about race unless that's what you wanted to do. And you made it clear
absolutely
that that's
not. It's not about race, not about politics. Like I agree with everything you said earlier. Not about race. Not about politics. It's about letting us do our job to make sure we can do what we can do.
I got it, and I understand the concern, and the best of the brothers. Tom, let me ask you something real quick before I let you guys go. You've been in the community, you've been around the political dynamic for a really long time. Have you ever seen anything about how quick, no matter what the situation is that happens these days, even in what's happening in your little community, how fast it goes to left versus right and wrong?
I haven't seen anything left or right in this thing, Chris. I just say it's a tragedy and everybody came together. No indication to me whatsoever of left or right.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for the perspective, Bob. I appreciate you making the appeal. We're a call away if we can help either of you. Thank you very much.
Thank
4
you
minutes
very
and
much.
35 seconds. I mean, I really hope that, one, you're paying attention, and if you can help. I wouldn't suggest going down there. It's dangerous, and they're overwhelmed, and the communities can't handle it. And I know a lot of people want to help. Think about your wallet. Think about doing it 2-3 months from now, because that's when everybody goes away. And I'm not yelling at you because I think that you're bad. I just know that we can be better. I know we can. And we got to stop letting the few compromise the many, all right? And I want to talk about what we just saw with the growth of extremism and fundamentalism in this country, and that's what it is. When you see those 10 faces that look like they could be your kids, they could be my kids, they should be on a college campus, they could be, but instead they're trying to kill cops. That's where we are in this country. Tell me I'm wrong. Listen, I got to tell you, if you want to have the fight, I'll have the fight, okay? If you want to try to tell me that you believe that you somehow represent something more pure when, if you're on the left, you just had 10 young people try to kill ICE officers because their policies suck, because the way they're doing it is wrong, and this is something you want to get behind and say, yeah, well, but, what but? What are you, nuts? If you want to have the fight, I'm here for it. Okay, because these fringe people on either side, you want somebody to take you on, I'm here for it. Because you're killing us with your crazy. What happened with these kids, these young people, I'm old, everybody's young to me. This was planned, it was organized, they baited, they picked the date, they were heavily harmed. I'm telling you, this could just have easily been an ISIS operation. And we would want to kill an entire country again. And yet now, This is no big deal. This is no big deal. I want to bring in two guys. I want to bring in Victor Avila and Phil Mudd. Phil Mudd, you know, he's a friend of mine. He's taught me so much over the years as a former FBI and CIA counterterrorism big shot. And Victor was a Homeland Security supervisory agent. Victor, it's good to see you again. Thank you, Phil, for coming in right after the holiday like this. First of all, you know, Phil, you would tell me, am I wrong, or is this exactly fruit of the poisonous tree that we're seeing with these people? They look exactly like the Mangione guys. They look exactly like the MAGA mirror movement on the left. I mean, what's your assessment?
It pains me. I mean, it's not the same numbers, but this is sort of January 6th on the left. Let me give you why I would say that. In the past, when I grew up as a kid, Chris, you wouldn't know what somebody at the table believed. Democrat, Republican, you wouldn't know. You look at what happens in the world today. The Republicans viewed the Democrats, and the president said this over the weekend, as enemies. The left views the right as fascists. So when you start transitioning from political partisanship to telling your audience, that is people like this, that the adversaries are enemies, that Republicans are enemies, there's a certain percentage of that population that commits an act of violence. Let me close by saying my big concern as someone who was involved in investigations here is this is a small corner of Texas. This is 10 people who are on social media. Multiply this by 50 states. I don't know how many counties there are in America. And I can tell you that the FBI has a problem, not just looking at January 6 people, but looking at people on the left who believe now this is the appropriate reaction to the new presidency. This is sort of partisanship turned to enemies in America. And this is the result, Chris.
Crazy white people, Victor. That's what we keep seeing. Crazy, and I'm not trying to absent them from criminal responsibility. I don't think that there's any insane. There may be sickness, but we keep seeing it again and again. When do we wake up to this reality, and then what do we do about it?
It's sickening for to say the least. And I know this personally. My partner and I were ambushed. I know what this is about. And listen, this is politically motivated. This is the rhetoric from the left and the narrative that they've been spewing for the last years. Remember the Abolish ICE movement years ago? It hasn't stopped, and they vilified law enforcement officers that happen to investigate immigration violations. So police officers pull you over for speeding all the time, and you don't see people going after personally to that police officer. But when it comes to the ICE agent, they're being doxxed, they're being attacked because they're doing their job and upholding the duty and the oath that they swore to do. This is intolerable for me, and I want to hear. I haven't heard any Democrat come out and condemn these actions and ask for it to stop, because it's about enough that we had about this. The last thing I want to see, Chris, is another ICE agent killed in line of duty because of these wackos.
You know, Victor got shot, for you guys at home. He was shot 3 times. And he survived it. I don't like bringing it up every time I have him on because he's a lot more than just what he survived in that one experience. You know, his head is just as valuable to us as what his body endured. But, Victor, people should know that. Phil, listen, man, you know, I get why this is dicey, and you don't have to own it. This is my perspective. But this is what I've been talking about, that, you know, these faces, to me, tell the story. This is who's coming at me online. These are the ones that are making the videos. And look, if these were a bunch of MAGA people, I think there'd be probably more male to female ratio, but that wouldn't surprise me either. We're creating our own enemy structure here at home. This is not Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the bad guys. We're worried about Iran and their proxies. Why do they need proxies? We're ready to kill ourselves.
I think that's right. And I think, let me be blunt, that the responsibility starts with leadership. There has been responsible leadership in this country. Look at the right. People like in my lifetime, the recent lifetime, Mitt Romney. If you look at conservative Democrats, if you look at Joe Manchin, for example, somebody who's regarded as a fringe of a Democrat, when I was in my 20s, he was viewed at the core. When fringe people in both parties start to characterize others as the adversary, this is what you're going to get. So I think you're right in characterizing this not as fringe, Chris. This is not fringe. This is starting to transition to the core of America. This is what a lot of people believe. When I run every day, I live in rural America in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I see a bumper sticker every day that says F Joe Biden and that says F you if you voted for him. My partner saw a bumper sticker today that said F Donald Trump and F you if you voted for him. You would not have seen that 30 years ago. You see it today. Leadership is a problem. They cannot say these things. They will lead people to do what you saw in Texas against ICE agents.
Yeah, and of course, look, Victor, you know this. Them saying, oh, this was wrong. Listen, it's not about saying it's wrong. We all know it's wrong. It's that the language you use and the imagery you use and the messaging that you put out there make this logical. It makes it that MAGA is afraid of people who are coming into the country, that you believe that if you are MAGA, that you want to destroy the country and you're a fascist and you want Trump to be king. That's the crazy. It doesn't matter what you apologize for. All right, gentlemen, I got to jump. Victor, best to you and the family. We'll continue this conversation because we keep killing ourselves. So I'll talk to you in probably a week or so. Phil, God bless and be well. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And what am I supposed to say? Oh, God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen again. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Why? Why wouldn't it? Who in power is fighting to make it stop? Who's showing us a way that is better? Who's giving people a reason to believe in anything other than blood and vengeance? You tell me. You tell me. So that takes us to the Epstein Files. Categorize it under C for crazy. But it was a big deal for MAGA. You look at people who have feelings about the vaccine, feelings about the deep state, and Epstein, and they checked every box. Now what are you supposed to do? Who do you believe? I'll tell you who Epstein's brother believes. Not the government. The problem with playing with conspiracies is that at some point, you're either going to have to put up or shut up. And now that the Trump administration, even though Bongino and Patel and others really trafficked in the Epstein files, right? And the assumption was that something was done to him, and it's because of the lists, what he had around him. And then the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, claimed months ago that they were going to release tens of thousands of incriminating documents. Remember, she said, they're right here on my desk. And then it never came. And then this past Sunday, right, and that's an intentional day, right? We don't want you really to pay attention. Trump's DOJ and FBI released a memo saying, no client list, no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. And he killed himself, period. This is exactly what so many in MAGA did not expect to hear nor want to hear. So let's discuss on the political and the personal side. We got Liz Wheeler, conservative commentator, host of the Liz Wheeler Show, absolutely invested in this and expected a different outcome. And joining by phone, that's the only way he does it. I've spoken to him before because he's afraid that people are going to come after him because he's Epstein's brother. Mark, who does not buy the DOJ's findings that his brother committed suicide. Liz, it's good to see you. Mark, thank you for being on the phone. Liz, Bondi says they're on my desk. Now she doesn't really seem to have a good answer. Did she mean the client list was on her desk, or was that just something figurative? How do you explain this?
Well, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, said today herself that that's not what she meant when she said the words, the client list is on my desk. But you heard the words as well as I did. She said the client list is on my desk, and that wasn't true. So it's a little hard to square what she said then with what she's saying now. That's the biggest problem with this whole story, Chris, is that people voted for President Trump because they wanted justice. We want justice. There was a lot of wrongdoing that was inflicted on the American people under the previous administration, both by Biden staffers and by deep state government bureaucratic employees. From Russiagate to the impeachments to parents being called terrorists because they didn't want critical race theory or trans ideology being taught to their children, to January 6th, to there's all kinds of different ways that MAGA, you can call President Trump supporters, anybody who dissented from Biden, were abused by the Biden administration, by the intel community, by the FBI, by the DOJ. And we voted for Trump because we wanted justice. And justice involves actually holding accountable the people who committed that wrongdoing. So now we see Pam Bondi. I was at the White House that day when Pam Bondi gave out those white binders. I was one of the ones who received that binder. So when you say before I'm invested in this, yeah, I am invested in this because what she did made me look like I was adding to some kind of clickbait weirdo influencer thing online, which I don't do. People that watch me know I'm very prudent. I don't engage in hot takes. And I gave her the benefit of the doubt. You give the benefit of the doubt to people on your own side. I thought, okay, I don't know why she gave us those binders if she didn't have good stuff in those binders, but she said there was another story. A whistleblower told her there were truckloads of documents. Hopefully she'll produce. And I gave her time. I was patient. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But here's the thing, Chris. That day in the White House, Pam Bondi bragged about making that cover sheet on that binder that you're showing on the screen. That cover sheet that reads the most transparent administration in history. Epstein Files Phase 1. She told us she made that. She printed it. She put it in that binder. How can you square that behavior with what she posted on the Department of Justice website on Sunday saying, actually, there's nothing here. All the things, all the incongruencies in the narrative that you've pointed out, that you've observed with your own eyes, it's not true. And we're not providing any evidence to you to show you that what you might have believed is not actually substantiated by evidence. You're just supposed to take my word for it after she had told us something different multiple times. This is why I've come out and said President Trump shouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior. Pam Bondi has become a liability to him because people care about this story. They care not so much because they care about the Epstein list itself, but because they care about justice. That's what they voted for. They voted for justice. They voted for transparency, and they're not getting either of those things with this kind of unforced error from Pam Bondi.
Oh, I don't think it's an unforced error. I think it's absolutely intentional. And they believe that you guys will just shut up and go along with whatever they say. And we'll see how it plays out. But Mark, for you, it's personal. This was your brother. And just so everybody knows, Mark wasn't part of anything that his brother was doing in this regard. He's never been connected to it. There's never been a suggestion. It's not about that. But Mark, you do not believe what the administration, the Trump administration, is putting out about your brother now. Why?
Well, every time they say something or do something to try to quash the fact that he was most likely murdered, they just put their foot further down their mouth. I mean, for instance, Kash Patel in the congressional hearing, he listed his credentials as a prosecutor and other such things, and he said that it was a suicide. He said, "You know a suicide when you see it." That's basically what he said. So the questions that popped into my mind was, first of all, number one, how many suicides has he seen? Number one. Two, is he a forensic pathologist? Does he have a medical degree? Does he have a certificate that he passed the CPR course? Does he have a Boy Scout merit badge for first aid? What is he basing his expertise on? Contrast that to Dr. Roman, who was a city pathologist who did the autopsy. She came out of the autopsy and said she couldn't call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. Dr. Michael Barton, who was there on my behalf, who witnessed the autopsy, also concurred that it looked more like a homicide than a suicide. Now, was Kash Patel in the autopsy room? No. Was Kash Patel in the prison when they found Jeffrey? No, I don't think so. And if he was there, that raises even a bigger question. So every time they say something, I mean, when Kash Patel came out with that statement, I laughed at how stupid it was. And then they just released this video. This you're going to like. After the death, a few days after the death, Bill Barr, the Attorney General, said he saw that video and he saw that nobody went in or out of the tier, and that convinced him it was a suicide. And I heard that and I realized how stupid that was, because no one could get to that door, go in, kill somebody, leave completely undetected. That's like an asinine concept. So if Jeff was killed, he was either killed by somebody on the tier or when they locked up the tier. So that's one part of it. Now, I asked to get the footage from that same camera on the Freedom of Information Act from 10 o'clock the night before until noon the following morning. That would show who locked up the tier, who were the last people on that tier. And in the morning, it would show, Michael Thomas going in the guard and finding the body, and it would show what the situation was when they removed the body from the tier. I was initially told I couldn't get that footage because it was still an open investigation. Okay, I understand that. But then when the investigation was over, I asked for that footage again, okay? And I was now told that the cameras that were operating don't show that area.
That's right.
I have this in writing from the Bureau of Prisons, that the cameras that were operating
I
don't
remember.
show that. And I was very specific about the footage, and it's the same footage that Bill Barr saw.
No, Mark, listen, I get it. I get it. And the transparency wasn't there. And then they said that there was a malfunction. Then they said they weren't coordinated. And look, I get why you guys are upset about what's happening here. But I can tell you this, it's not over. And it's not about what I think or don't think about the situation. That's not relevant. The process isn't over. Liz, thank you. We'll be in touch whenever you want. You know how to get me. Take care. We'll keep talking. Mark Epstein, we're always a call away. All right?
Thanks,
We'll be right back. All right. So it looks like there's a change in the state of play with America's disposition towards Russia. He used to call Putin a great guy, smart guy, great leader, so strong. Now he says he throws around a lot of BS and he thinks he just wants to kill people. My question is, why did America stop giving aid to Ukraine and then all of a sudden turn around and decide to give more? And the president says he didn't know who made the first decision. Really? Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine is Bill Taylor. Bill, I give you the time in this segment to explain what you think is going on and what matters.
So, Chris, what matters is that the United States and the U.S. president has now figured out, has now understood that Putin is not his friend, that Putin is the obstacle to what he's trying to do. President Trump, to his credit, has said since the campaign he wants to solve this problem. And he's, again, give him credit, he's been trying. The problem is Putin. The problem is not Zelensky. The problem is not the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are defending themselves against that aggression from the Russians. And President Trump has now figured it out, that Putin is the problem. And so what he has to do, what President Trump has to do is put pressure on Putin, which he can do. Senator Graham has a sanctions bill. President Trump has now decided to send more weapons. That's going to be pressure on Putin to come to the table. That's what needs to happen.
Well, Bill, I don't understand what happened, though. Who cut the aid, and was this just a political gambit to make it look like Trump was providing more after it had been cut off? And isn't that a gap that costs lives?
It certainly costs lives. There's absolutely no doubt that it costs lives and will cost more. But I don't think it was a conspiracy, Chris. I think it's more chaos within the administration. One hand not knowing what the other is doing, no one claiming credit for that cutoff. It was so interesting to see Secretary Hicks sitting right beside the president at that cabinet meeting when he said he didn't know who had cut it off. So I think what we're seeing now is a realignment and an understanding and a focus on who the problem is. The problem is Putin.
Mr. Ambassador Bill Taylor, thank you so much for your perspective and doing it succinctly. I appreciate you, and we'll speak again. Take care. We'll be right back. Look, I don't like the way the government's handling, the Trump administration's handling the Epstein stuff. But look, this is what you get when you play with a conspiracy for advantage and bash the government. When you use the Epstein conspiracy to say that everyone in government is a liar, and now you are in charge, and you wind up now wanting to tell the truth and say, oh, there was nothing to it, you are now going to be hoisted on your own petard. You're going to be blown up by the same thing that you were trying to use for advantage. That's why this is happening. Where I don't see any kind of explanation that is satisfying is these two fringe movements on either side owning that they are making people violent. Who will be the first to be better? Because right now they are both desperate to be worse. Leland Vittert starts right now.
You really don't think there's more to Epstein? Come on.
I think that there is plenty there, but when you play with fire and say, they're not telling you, but I would tell you, I would, and then you get in there, and now just like with the Kennedy files, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. Now you become what you fed them in the first place, which is someone who can't be trusted. So I don't have any sympathy for them being in this spot.
Well, I don't have sympathy for any politician in any spot. That's sort of our job. But 40 years later, right, we find out, or more than that, 60 years later, we find out that there was CIA people following Oswald from those new documents. So what, 60 years from now we figure out with Epstein?
No, because they'll have a new one. You know what I mean? The best thing that power has going for it is time. Is that, the more things happen, the more you can escape, any accountability unless it happens in the moment. And that's why we got to keep our eye on the ball.
This time yesterday, literally 24 hours ago, we were watching the following out of the White House cabinet meeting where the subject of Jeffrey Epstein came up, and Donald Trump injected himself into the exchange, which was meant to be between the New York Post reporter and Pam Bondi, as follows. SOT 1.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape?
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Okay. Trump himself promised full transparency on the Jeffrey Epstein case when he was running for president. This has been a big issue on the right. My friend Dan Bongino was one of the people who made it a big issue. So did Kash Patel, talking about it over and over and over again. It is just not real for Trump to pretend he's shocked this is still an issue. Nothing's been resolved. Nothing's been released. He promised transparency, as did his attorney general. And then they release a memo saying, you're not getting anything. It's over. Just trust us. And that was not real. Trump pretending he's shocked that people are still interested in it. Your take, Mark.
Well, let me first talk about that soundbite and then the bigger issue. So I'm a student of Donald Trump and how he handles public appearances, as are you. And I don't have the world's most sensitive spidey sense, but I got some spidey sense. That he regularly says, I don't like that question, does it all the time, but that was with a purpose. Okay, so I don't see how anyone could look at that and not see an attempt by the president to intimidate the press from ever asking again about it. That's how I read it. Mm-hmm. What are the arguments against withholding? What are the arguments for transparency? MAGA really wants it. I keep a running list here of all the news organizations on the right and individuals who are demanding transparency still. It's a long list, and it includes many people who are typically automatically supportive of the president. So MAGA wants it. His base wants it. 2, it's the right thing to do for the victims and for public trust. 3, as you said, the president supported this on a regular basis. And 4, they said they were going to do it. So there's a credibility issue. So all those things would argue for disclosure, transparency, release. What's on the other side? I pause pregnantly. What's on the other side? What's on the other side is the suspicion that this is intended to protect rich and powerful men. So I think that this could go either way. The news cycle could move on. MAGA often will pick fights with Donald Trump and then move on. They're a resilient group. So this and the press corps, the dominant press corps, the so-called legacy media, they have for years, and they're continuing now, to be remarkably uninterested in what is both an important and interesting story, something the press corps normally covers. Okay. So I think it could go either way. This could disappear, and those who don't want further disclosure could have their way / get away with it. Or those demanding justice and disclosure could get their way. I don't know which way it's going to go. But again, I'll go back to the first thing I said. That was a remarkable performance by the president.
It was an obvious attempt to deflect and to set the messaging like we're not talking about Epstein anymore, period.
Right.
And I'm the head of MAGA, and that's what I say. But it's too late. That animal has already been created, and it's pretty ferocious. It's not going to be tamed just by one line from the president at a cabinet meeting. He helped create it. He helped inspire it. His top lieutenants helped create it. And we too have been watching the reaction amongst the most, faithful supporters of the president. We put together a budded soundbite. In this, you'll hear names you'll hear from names that you know. The only one who doesn't seem to be demanding more is our friend Ben Shapiro, but you'll hear almost a uniform tone from literally almost everyone else on the right. Take a listen.
Nobody told us prior to this that the Epstein Files would be anywhere even on the agenda for that day. And it was really sprung as a surprise to all of us. We get handed these binders, and then before we even have a chance to look into them, we're hauled out actually in front of the cameras that were all there. We don't have the accountability that was spoken of. We don't have the releases that were spoken of. And it's indefensible. It's indefensible that the answers aren't there when so much was promised.
As someone who voted for the president, campaigned for the president a lot, I'm not attacking the president, but I think even people who are fully on board with the bulk of the MAGA agenda are like, this is too much, actually.
Yes.
I'm saying that with love, and I hope that they're listening, because I think this threatens to blow up the whole thing. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused, I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I've told you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped?
Yeah.
Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff.
Can't the Department of Justice move to unseal things that were put under seal? Isn't that technically the way that this could potentially be brought to the public? Because I think we need mass disclosure. I think we need more information. At least for my under 30 crowd, I know my demo, they are volcanic over this whole thing. And by the way, the over 60 crowd, they're like, Epstein, whatever, not a big deal. No, but under 30, can you explain that to our audience too, Mike? The hyper online under 30 crowd, this is a major, major issue.
If you're willing to throw that over and claim they're lying, then I'd like to see you present your evidence that they are in fact lying. Because I know Dan. I don't think that Dan Bongino is lying to me. I know Kash Patel a little bit. I don't think Kash Patel is lying to me. I don't think these people are lying to me. Which means that if somebody else continues to claim that they're lying, they ought to provide their evidence at this point.
Pam Bondi needs to be fired. Who is rolling this out? The little rascals? Panky, look, I got some videotape. What are you doing? This is ridiculous.
Really interesting, right, Mark?
Yeah, every time I see Ben Shapiro, I think maybe I should adopt more of his voice for my show. I feel like he's onto something with that voice. As you and I have talked about, Charlie and Tucker are extremely influential with the administration, and when they say not just the morally right thing to do, but the demand of the base is more disclosure, and then but Ben gives voice to the reality for some, which is Pam Bondi's taking a lot more heat than Kash Patel and Dan are, a lot more. And yet they're out there with more specificity saying, trust us, case closed. So I'll continue to watch to see how they handle this. The president endorsed them on True Social the other day, not specifically on this issue, but in general.
Not her.
But not her, although he was pretty friendly in the cabinet room.
But he knew she was twisting by a string, and he did not send out a nice tweet about her.
Now you didn't include Laura Loomer in your mashup.
Could have.
She is much derided, obviously, and there are people in the White House who don't like her influence, but she doesn't lose that often. She doesn't lose that often, and she's very hepped up about this. But I'll say again, there's a lot of
she wants Bondi fired.
Yeah, there are a lot of MAGA obsessions that aren't necessarily in the public interest or aren't rooted in truth, justice, and the American way. This is a real thing. And Tucker, I think, gave voice to it. Like, forget the conspiracy theories. Just deal with the reality of how this man was treated by the criminal justice system and how discouraging that was, not just to the victims, but to people who believe in justice and people who believe in the American system treating people fairly. Like, this requires extraordinarily detailed care and disclosure. And the administration, after championing it and after knowing full well how important it was, as Charlie said, to so many of Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, is basically saying, trust us, case closed. And it could sustain, but I don't think it will. And I don't think it should, because imagine the status quo and what that will do to people's lack of trust in the government and in and commitments that have been made.
Listening to the theorizing around it has been fascinating. Just this morning, I was listening to Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, and also just very bright social commentator. And he was saying, let's just say, without evidence, he was very open, but this is just a theory. Let's just say that there is some Israel connection with Epstein. Like, he was an agent, something, collecting compromat on various people. Mm-hmm. And he went to Trump and said, you got to make this go away. And Trump went to Bongino and Patel and Bondi and said, for the sake of peace in the Middle East, we're moving on. There's nothing to see here. And that's what I want you to say. Would I consider that a lie I couldn't forgive? That's a Scott Adams still. No, I wouldn't, he said. The president, this is total speculation, but the president going to those three and saying, it's over, I don't care what you say, but you have to make it go away, we're moving on, would explain the way all three have behaved over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Again, if they're telling the truth and they really believe that the right thing for the world is to say there's nothing to see here, didn't commit suicide, wasn't murdered, didn't have a list, nothing more to disclose that would be good for the public to know, then they're doing a crap job explaining why. They're doing a crap job giving us confidence. There needs to be long interviews, long press conferences, not just a statement and not just short disclosure. And they need to walk through it all. Pam Bondi yesterday says, well, there's a minute gap every day. Maybe, but minute gap is something that, is not going to go away without a really clear explanation. And
she dropped that like it was a nothing. Everybody was like, wait, what? It's real? The minute before midnight thing is real? And you thought you were just going to get away with it?
Every night. On Next Up, there's a minute gap every episode where I tell my best jokes and the producers cut them out.
And someone winds up dead, FYI.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what? Wait, what?
Someone dies at the end of every episode. Again, the Mossad thing in my world, the Mossad thing's very big as a matter of speculation. But the other speculation is, as my friend Dan Turntine says, Donald Trump, has deep affiliations where Jeffrey Epstein did in South Florida and on the Upper East Side of New York City. And so maybe he's trying to protect friends. Now, some people say he's trying to protect himself. No idea. But as I said before, there needs to be an explanation for what they're doing, because all the all the equities, all of the logic, all the doing the right thing falls on the side of disclosure. So if they're telling the truth, if they're confident that there is nothing more to disclose that would be in the public interest to know, they need to do a better job of walking us through that and not just saying to reporters, how dare you ask?
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898 and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
This is truly unusual breaking news. You know the breaking news animation. You know sometimes the news is big, significant, serious. This one is unusual. A major escalation in what is increasingly a kind of political, quiet, peaceful civil war, but a civil war of political proportions for MAGA over these Epstein files. And it's roiling the Trump administration at quite literally the highest levels. Sources detailing the ongoing clash over a fight that could cost someone their job. Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi clashing with the FBI number 2 official Dan Bongino. As everybody who follows these kind of stories knows, technically the AG oversees the FBI, but if you remember Comey or other strong-willed FBI officials, when you're at that number 1, number 2 level, they sometimes fight with the DOJ. Sources say Bongino is so upset about all this, he's saying maybe he'll just leave, which would be a very quick tenure, by the way, and he would be leaving in a sort of protest or criticism of Bondi's handling of the Epstein files. Other outside agitators, including Tucker Carlson, saying she's lost confidence, maybe she has to go. He was not at work today, reportedly. Sources also say Bondi and Bongino got into a heated clash Wednesday in a high-level meeting with him, her, FBI Director Patel, and Donald Trump's number 1 person who tracks all this stuff and makes the big staffing decisions, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, who, of course, also ran the Victoria's campaign. Axios has a report on this where Pam says her piece, Dan says his piece, didn't end on friendly terms. Bongino left angry. And you don't need to be a scholar of reporting or Watergate level intrigue to know somebody in this small meeting is leaking this stuff to Axios if it's true. A source close to Bongino saying he ain't coming back. Out of control furious is the other quote. This destroyed his career. He's threatening to quit and torch Pam unless she's fired, said someone who, again, according to that reporting, spoke with Bongino. By the way, hire podcasters and right-wing media figures to run major parts of the government, and you may find major parts of the government are being leaked on and run like another piece of podcast content. I'll come back to how some of this does swirl around MAGA content. Other parts of it, of course, are serious when you think about the victims in the original Epstein case. All of this, though, occurred because the DOJ has fallen short of the pledges that people around Trump, including Bondi, made. There were many questions about the Epstein case. From the moment of his in-custody death, this news program, for example, has reported on those questions. There are some suspicious details. This news program has not done what a lot of the internet and MAGA right-wing sort of circles have done, which is assert without evidence what maybe happened and then wait for the government to confirm it. Now we're seeing significant backlash from MAGA, probably some of the loudest against Trump since he took office. Journalists, other people following Doge and Musk may be reporting one set of problems to the administration, but on the right, this is the big problem. All of this is because it was partly stoked by the very people who now say nothing to see here. They stoked this conspiracy which imploded on them.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now.
In Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing.
we have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
What names are in there, man? You understand how many powerful people probably want this thing to desperately go away?
The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Release the list. That's the now vice president. The list's on my desk, the attorney general. The government gangsters, quote unquote, are in charge of all this stuff. The problem is they caught the car. All those people talking up that way now have the goods. They're in the government. They used to be pointing their finger. They found it pointing at themselves, like many an old internet meme, and it's blown up on them. So this matters politically because one or more people may be out of a job. It matters in a deeper sense because we're seeing the limits of governing by clickbait or political conspiracy theory. It also could matter if any of it got back to the real questions about the Epstein case. Not whether Pam Bondi was lying when she said she had an Epstein list or is lying now when the memo says it doesn't exist, but can't be both. Now, in the FBI, there's a wider dysfunction involving some of these same people who we know from what they're saying have been spending many, many days, a lot of their energy on a client list they now say doesn't exist. But the Times is reporting that the FBI is taking the unusual step of using lie detectors for loyalty tests, subjecting personnel to questions as specific as to whether they've criticized or, quote, cast aspersions on Patel, who you just saw in that other clip talking about gangsters. This looks like something from a movie or another era, but according to the Times, it's happening. And in Trump's DOJ under Bondi, there's also a purge because there are officials who say they might be targeted not for how they're doing their job, but whether they're insufficiently, quote, politically loyal to Bondi and Trump. Fired without explanation, a culture of fear is how the Post describes it. And so one more point on all this tonight. What started as a very real question about a suspicious in-custody death, any journalist or lawyer could tell you the government's holding a high-profile detainee and they die under suspicious circumstances, you want to investigate that. What started with something real morphed into a MAGA conspiracy theory that was sold so hard by these leaders that it's blown up in their face. And more than almost anything Trump has done thus far in the second term, and you follow the news, you're familiar with it, this is the thing saddling Trump. This is the thing that has them leaking on each other, fighting with each other, talking about not coming back to work, all because the story they sold themselves blew up on themselves. I want to bring in our experts, Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times and MSNBC analyst, and Alencia Johnson, who worked on the Harris 24 campaign and wrote Flip the Tables, Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. Plenty in there for the times we're in now. Welcome to both of you. Michelle, multiple things can be true. We're all for investigating and holding the government accountable. If there were problems in the original handling of Epstein, it stretches from the Trump folks who were in charge of the Bureau of Prisons at the time. If there was further cover-up or lack of transparency, that would include, of course, the ensuing Democratic administration, and now back to the Trump folks again. So there may be good questions to ask, and yet so many of the questions that have blown up in their face seem to be of their own making. In Bondi's case, saying things that she would know to be untrue.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I should say I don't really have very many priors about this. I'm inclined to believe that if there was evidence that Epstein was murdered, or if there was evidence of a so-called client list, given that we've had first Trump in charge, then Biden, now Trump again, there would be somebody who had the incentive to leak it or to put that out there. You know, that said, there are, as you said earlier, there are a lot of weird things about this case, including now the changed metadata on the tape that they put out. But I think the key is two things. One, that Pam Bondi has made these statements that can't be reconciled. Either she was lying outright and kind of getting the MAGA people's hopes up when she said, I have this list on my desk, you know, or she's lying now when she says no such list exists and there's nothing there. And I think that part of it is that there's a difference between someone like Pam Bondi, who could have been a Republican official in a lot of different administrations, and someone like Dan Bongino, who is purely a creature of the MAGA world, would never be in the FBI under any other president, and then sort of has no political or entertainment future if he is seen by the MAGA base as a traitor. Pam Bondi is more of a sort of Bill Barr figure. And so they might all despise her. But if they feel really betrayed by Dan Bongino, who I think probably was a true believer that he was going to come in there and they were going to have this cathartic exposure of all their enemies, if he's now seen as being part of a cover-up, I think that's much more of a threat to him personally.
Yeah. I appreciate that breakdown. That makes a lot of sense. Alencia, I want to play the MAGA meltdown over this. For folks who aren't constantly watching The War Room or Tucker, you maybe only have heard some of it. But again, I don't think it's an overstatement that they're more upset about this than most anything that's happened in these first 170 days. Take a look.
Don't tell us all this stuff's coming out and the investigation's massive and that Trump wants it released and then say, oh, there's nothing there.
This stinks. This just reeks.
Pam Bondi needs to be fired. Who is rolling this out? The little rascals?
So I'm going to go throw up, actually.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
This seems like unforgivable behavior.
For them to do something like this tears my guts out.
Alencia.
It's giving Real Housewives of D.C. and a really nasty reunion. But, it's interesting. Your lead into that was the point that I've been thinking about. There have been so many egregious things that have happened in this administration from, we see unemployment having gone up under this administration. We see this horrible bill that happened last week. We see what is happening with these ICE raids, all of these things that have happened in this first 170 days. And this is the thing that the base is literally crying over on television and on video. And so it will be interesting to see how, moving forward, the administration actually starts to bring in some of these MAGA loyalists who, quite frankly, are these conspiracy theorists that they would campaign with, right, in 2024. They brought them into the administration, and now they are infighting, and it's leaking out publicly. Is that continuing to erode the trust that the MAGA base has with the Trump administration? And I think it will. It will. Now, I actually don't have a lot of empathy for a lot of MAGA supporters because we've been here before in his first administration, right? He'll make one promise and then go the complete opposite direction. He continues to spew conspiracy theories, or people in his cabinet do, but yet that's actually not enough for people to pump the brakes. And the people who can pump the brakes are actually the people.
Let me jump in. But on the politics, you ran with Harris, 1.5 race, right? Had it started earlier or different things happen, 1.5 in politics, that's not a Reagan landslide, right? Things can shift. Bannon says, whatever you think of him on the politics, that if they continue to mess this up, they're going to lose 10% of their base, which in a general election, quick math, would be a 5-point swing, which is pretty striking about how big they think the issue is. Take a look.
For this to go away, you're going to lose 10% of the MAGA movement. If we lose 10% of the MAGA movement right now, we're going to lose 40 seats in 26. We're going to lose the president.
One Republican congressman predicted back in February that we'd never learn the truth about what really happened to the disgraced pedophile.
What are we going to learn?
Just today, the FBI found 1,400 new files. Now, I don't know. They're as crooked as a dog's leg, as we say in East Tennessee. I don't trust any of them. I don't think we're going to get, I don't know. No, just no.
Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, member of the House Oversight Accountability Committee, joins us now. The confident smile of a man who can say, "I told you so," is what I see on your face, sir.
I don't take any pleasure in it. I want to bury those dirt bags, but I'm afraid I was right. I've seen too much of it. And every time they're supposed to release something, they never do, whether it be UFOs, JFK, RFK. This is just It's the nature of the beast up here.
Who are the dirtbags?
I think your second, third level tier people that are in a lot of these departments that we never get to. You have staffers and things like that on the Capitol Hill that leak things, that stop important pieces of legislation. And I just feel like you've got to, I guess I'll write about it in my book if I live to tell that day. But I think the files existed at one time. I think they were destroyed in the previous administration. And I think if they'd ever had anything on Trump, it would have been out day one.
Agreed.
Under the Biden administration. And I think there's some very prominent people. There's Hollywood people, but I think there's world leaders too. And would it have caused economic disruption around the globe? Maybe, but I don't really care. I want to.
You think there's a theory? Is there a theory, perhaps, that none of the, or not none, but maybe some of the people on the list didn't do anything wrong, and this would be a terrible guilt by association to put their names out, just to put everybody's name out? No one's been charged with a crime. Put all these people's names out, and suddenly, because they had an interaction with Epstein that was completely benign, they're labeled as one of his buddies?
What's Miss Maxwell doing in jail? What did she do? Where is that? You know, who did she provide whatever she did? Why is she in jail? You know, that's got to be a question that should be asked at some point. But again, under the previous administration, we're not going to get that. Dead men tell no tales. He's dead, and
well, I just want to be clear what you're saying. Are you saying the previous administration destroyed everything, or are you saying that the Trump administration is basically doing the same thing as the previous administration?
No, I think they destroyed everything. I think.
So why wouldn't Pam Bondi say that?
She doesn't have any proof of it. I'm just telling you what I think. I mean, I've been around this town enough. I don't think I think she's got over her skis pretty much, saying all this stuff. The files are on my desk. I'm going to release it. And then she releases stuff that I knew, so I just don't think, I think they all got out there, got a little excited, and I don't think they exist. And that's my currently. I think they did it. I think they did it one time. You got an administration that lied about it, said Hunter Biden didn't, his laptop, that didn't exist. That's a Russian, you had 30 of the
I get all that.
Intelligence people in the country say that, and they didn't get chastised by anybody but y'all and a couple others.
No, look, we chastise everybody equally. It's why we appreciate you being willing to cut. Yeah, you know that better than most. But I want to play for you Bill O'Reilly on how he sees it. Take a listen.
Okay.
I talked to President Trump man to man, eye to eye, on St. Patrick's Day about this and the Kennedy files and the King files. It was all one conversation. And he said, and I agree, there are a lot of names associated with Epstein that had nothing to do with Epstein's conduct. They maybe had lunch with him or maybe had some correspondence for one thing or another. If that name gets out, those people are destroyed.
So his theory is kind of the same as what I just put out. The flip side of that is that he also said that this is going to hurt Trump because Trump promised this, Pam Bondi promised this. They made a big deal about it in the campaign. And now there's nothing to see. You agree? You seem upset.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I don't think they ever had it. I think they were told they had it. And again, this is a bureaucrat deciding what you and I can handle. And I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I think they could release it and say these people were not considered conspirators. I mean, they were not conspirators. They weren't considered pedophiles or involved in anything. They visited. They flew on. Trump flew on his plane, but that's just because it was on the manifest. But he didn't fly to freaking pedophile island. He flew from like Florida up to New York, and that's what rich people do. I know rich people that do that all the time. There is a difference, and I think you could make that designation
between different people. I agree with you on this. What's missing from the Epstein files? Thousands of pages of investigative documents, video and digital evidence. Who knows what actually the client list was, whether there was a list or they'd have to come up with a list based on everything else. The victim information and the evidence of broader blackmail schemes. Also, why people gave him so much money to manage when he was, by all accounts, a pretty sort of average to poor money manager is something that's out there. This now from our partners at The Hill. Democrats gloat as MAGA world explodes over Epstein files. Democrats are also exploiting the division to advance another unfounded theory that Trump won't release the files because he's featured within them. But more importantly, the fact that there's this big division in MAGA world over this, what does that say to you?
I think there's a division, but of course the Democrats in the Hill are not on our side. They're going to stir everything up, just like Elon Musk. Now they're their biggest fan because he's starting some crazy third party. And so, you know, I just don't buy that. I don't buy that. You know, and, I mean, you've got these news organizations and they're friends of mine, but dadgummit, come on. They're so far to the left, they come around to the other side almost. So I don't buy that. I think there'll be another bright, shiny object out there and folks will get distracted again. But again, this is what happens in a country where 12 to 15% of the people who are eligible to vote. You got to get educated. We got to get people in office that have some guts and have some moral and have some morals. And currently we're, you know, I'm kind of in the minority in the not in the morals department, but just in the fact that, you know, I don't come from money. The big boys hate my guts. They love me the day after the election. And I get that. I get that all the time. I'll never raise the money they do. I get the threats from leadership or people that associate with the leadership tell me that I need to calm down on stuff. And then I remind them, I say, well,
is anybody telling you, I got to run in a minute, but I want you to answer this for me. Is anybody getting on you about the Epstein stuff? Were you ever told to pipe down about that? Are you being told now, like, let's just move on from this?
Yeah, but here's how it works. You know, I've had them come talk to me on the floor about things, and we'll just leave it at that, things. And I said, well, it's the truth though, right? And they said, well, yeah, it's the truth, but you just got to quit saying it. And the way it works is kind of like I've had this stuff happen to me. It's kind of like
sounds like the mob or something.
It's Washington D.C. Are you paying attention?
There's some similarities.
But no, but no. I mean, I'm walking down the hall. I'm walking down the hall, and a member that I know, who's a friend, tells me, you know, hey man, do we really need to dig into this? Don't you think you need to maybe back off? And you know, that's how it works. Not random. That's how it works.
That's how it works. And we always appreciate you being willing to come on and talk about it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
We all know what the Trump administration did this week. Now we're getting dribs and drabs. And by the way, I said about 18 months ago on this show that people would be hearing from Jeffrey Epstein. And then I made clear he's not alive. I was never suggesting that. But I knew of tapes of Jeffrey Epstein that would get released. And let's just say I stand by my story. I mean it still 100%. Just stand by, okay? By the way, some already were released right before the election that were largely ignored because it was right before the election. But they're not done. There will be more. And you can trust me. Trust me. I don't say things I can't back up, okay? So that's happening. In any event, back to the actual substance. There's a clip of Alan Dershowitz that's gone totally viral. It was from an interview he gave Sean Spicer back in March. I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to update it for you. And then we're going to talk about what, if anything, it all means for what we're supposed to believe about the FBI's files. Here it is.
So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are, at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them. But they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money. And those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed.
Very interesting. Everyone, that's sort of a Rorschach test for how you feel about this case, because people who believe the FBI is withholding names of like a pedophile ring focus on the first half, and people who don't focus on the second half. We know Alan very well. We covered very, very closely Virginia Giuffre's accusations against him. He came on the show when it was in its infancy, and we did a very deep dive into all of it. Alan has been totally exonerated on those accusations. He disproved this woman's accusations with actual receipts and plane tickets and so on. None of it held up. And ultimately, not surprisingly, she withdrew her suit against him and confessed she may have confused him with someone else, which is the best you're going to get as a guy who gets accused in these cases falsely. But we reached out to him about this soundbite, and he said, I did not talk about a client list. He said to us, let me tell you what the situation is. There are redacted statements in the FBI's file by the accuser, the same woman who accused me, Virginia Giuffre. In her statement to the FBI, she never mentioned me because she never heard of me. She didn't know me. But in the statement to the FBI, she did accuse a bunch of other people, and their names are in the report. But the report has been redacted. That's been censored, kept secret. I've seen it, however. I do know who's in that list. And I know a couple of other people who have been accused as well. I don't know whether or not they actually did anything wrong. I know they were accused mostly by the same woman who falsely accused me. We're talking about Virginia Giuffre. And one of the things that's been suppressed is all the information that is negative to the accusers, the information that proves the accusers made up the stories. So it's much more complicated. There's no client list, he says. There are names of people who are accused, and there are names of people who falsely accuse them. That's all there is. It's a redacted FBI report in which Virginia Giuffre names people, and I know who the people are, and the court has kept the list secret and has refused to unredact the list. Okay, so what he seems to be saying, guys, is it's not just Alan who was accused by Virginia, or Prince Andrew who was accused by Virginia, or Epstein who was accused by Virginia. The list goes on. But that, and there appears to be more than just Virginia as an accuser in these files. But she's got a very sketchy history with the truth. She's recently deceased. But there's no question Virginia lied about Alan. And I'm sure she did lie about others. And so he's basically saying the so-called files are more ambiguous than people who believe there's a mass pedophile ring would want you to believe. And Alan believes it should all be released, and that these other guys who get accused in these files should have to defend themselves the same way Alan had to by, disputing each charge. He doesn't like what's happening with either a court holding back redacted documents or the FBI just sort of saying in a sweeping manner, there's nothing to see here, move on. Viva, I'll start with you on it, and then I'll get to you, Dave.
Well, we're using this term client list in a very, convenient manner where it either has a strict definition that can be weaseled out of. So they say it's not a client list. I think everybody understands what is meant by the client list. Unindicted co-conspirators or the actual clients of Jeffrey Epstein, not as said by Pam Bondi en passant for a Fox interview, as put to a letter that she signed to Kash Patel in February 2025, where she says, I've got a list of Jeffrey Epstein and his clients. That's what people want to understand and want to know here. Not whether or not there's a mass pedophile list and yet a client list. Here's Mr. Jane Doe's favorite, person, whatever. They want to know who was involved in this sex trafficking ring that involved thousands of people, that spanned decades, that warranted him setting up cameras in his island so that he could capture videos, not of himself only with these ladies, with these women and girls, but the people who went to his island. People have been told for years that there were unindicted co-conspirators, that there were other people involved in the sex trafficking. You don't go to jail for sex trafficking to nobody but yourself and then come out later and say, there is no client list, there is no unindicted co-conspirators. And when Pam Bondi wrote in a letter that we have Epstein and a list of his clients, that she didn't mean a list of his clients. So whether or not it has the title client list, people, I say not have been led to believe, it only stands to reason from everything that we've known for the last decade plus. Other people were involved, as Dershowitz says, either as false accusers or as accused, because Epstein wasn't doing this for himself. The videos that they had at his place that they seized were not only of himself, they are ambiguous as to whether or not it was child pornography that was downloaded or produced. And now they just want to sweep it under the rug with an unsigned, undated memo uploaded to the DOJ after it's leaked to Axios. Don't expect anybody to believe that.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, I have a lot of respect for Professor Dershowitz. He was my law professor, and you don't have to just trust or believe him about Virginia Giuffre's credibility issues, because prosecutors felt the same way. That's why she was not called to testify in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And so, yes, she did have credibility issues. And as far as what's still out there, one thing that I'm interested in is what's on the thumb drives that were taken from Jeffrey Epstein's apartment on July 6th and 7th of 2019, when the authorities raided his place and had to use a saw to get into his safe. And they recovered a bunch of thumb drives. It's not clear whether the contents of that have ever been disclosed. And as you correctly
Sorry,
said,
just to confirm what you said, Dave, because I lost it. Did you say at his place in Florida or his place in New York?
New York. This is from New York.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, there was a safe there, and they had to use a saw to get in it, and they recovered all these thumb drives. And it's not clear whether that's ever been made public. They found cash, diamonds, and passports, and these thumb drives. Now, part of the problem is that you're dealing with, as you correctly said, judges who have put a kibosh on it, as well as a decision by the FBI. I think the FBI's decision is more discretionary because they are trying to protect names of victims, child porn, and all these things that they don't want disclosed. If there are names of individuals who are directly tied to this, then it should be disclosed. And even if there are names of people who are affiliated, like in the Black Book, who are not part of Epstein Island, I think the public is sophisticated enough where if you release everyone's names, they can sort out who was part of the pedophilia ring and who just was an associate, someone who knew Jeffrey Epstein. Just because you're in his Black Book, just because you knew him, doesn't mean you're a pedophile. But I think the FBI and the Trump administration is being very careful about that. They don't want to tar people who are not guilty of any crimes, and perhaps the president himself is concerned himself being mentioned in that same category, even though there's no proof he committed any of the crimes. So I get why they're very careful, but until you be more transparent, you're going to have all these questions out there and all these bloggers, and Viva is right to ask these questions. And so they're going to have to do something because this story is not going away.
Mm-hmm. There's a woman, I want to make sure I have her title correct. Her name is Sigrid McCauley, and she's an attorney representing people who are suing Epstein's former accountant. This is one of the last Epstein cases that's in federal court. She went on News Nation, spoke to Elizabeth Vargas, I think on Wednesday. And here's what she said. Take a listen to SOT 4.
What's really just astonishing about this recent disclosure from the government is that they know they are sitting on a treasure trove of information and they're not turning it over. And I've worked on these cases for over 10 years now. There's a plethora of information that the public has not been able to see relating to Epstein and his co-conspirators.
What kind of information?
All kinds of information. I mean, certainly if you look at what the government recently disclosed, the first time Pam Bondi came out and gave us some information, you'll see a list where they took multiple computers, multiple items from the houses. You know, what was on those computers? The public has not seen that. What do the financial records tell us? Do they tell us that money was being given to him by certain individuals, that money was flowing out to certain individuals? All of that is critical for the public to be able to know.
That was a very good last question there, Viva.
It's that people were involved in this. And we know that video was seized, and now we're led to believe a decade later it was only child pornography and only for Jeffrey Epstein's personal pleasure. I mean, it doesn't pass the smell test. And it's not to hold people to their statements before they were in office. I happen to personally believe Kash Patel and Dan Bongino what they said for years, what Kash Patel said very recently, December 2023. There's a list. Bill Gates, you don't think Bill Gates is lobbying the government to not release the list? The bottom line is, who went to the island? Why was Ehud Barak visiting Jeffrey Epstein 30 times after he was a known convicted solicitor of child prostitution? Ehud Barak's explanation, I didn't know that he was convicted. My goodness, I do background checks on babysitters. I don't believe that the former prime minister of Israel didn't do background checks on Epstein. And we're sitting here after years and decades of this. Trump promised to declassify the information. You have Bindergate. You have Bondi on letter saying a list of Epstein's clients. Then you have the Bindergate, which humiliates a bunch of influencers. And then we're told phase one has now turned into nothing. Go home. There's an unsigned memo saying it was all conspiracy, and anybody perpetrating or perpetuating this right now is doing a disservice to the victims and the government. I mean, I don't know how you expect people to believe that, even if it's true. 10 hours of footage of a cell, and we still have questions as to whether or not it's even the right cell, is not going to confirm that Epstein killed himself. And even if you have 10 hours of Epstein's cell showing nobody went in and checked on him every 20 to 30 minutes, a man who was on suicide watch 20 minutes earlier, itself is a conspiracy. So, being told to sit down, be quiet, and stop asking questions is itself a conspiracy.
What do you make of that, Dave? I mean, I know you've been somewhat defensive of Pam Bondi, who you know as a former Florida attorney.
I believe she misspoke, and I think I believe her when she says that what she was referring to was the file was on her desk, not a client list. There is no evidence that there's a client list, the list of all the Johns out there. I mean, if that existed, Ghislaine Maxwell would have given that up in exchange for her freedom. There's been no evidence. And I also looked to the reporters who were the first ones, the Julie Browns, who helped break this story again, at least put it back in the public's consciousness. Tara Palmieri and others who are close to it. And they have said there is no client list. So there's no evidence of any client list. So I think that the sin of the administration perhaps is trying to appease the conspiracy theorists. And now when you're in the role of being in government, you have a different role than you were when you're a blogger. When Bongino and Kash Patel were out there blogging, yes, you can help perpetuate conspiracy theorists. But when you're in charge, you got to deal with facts, and they're dealing with the facts.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Today, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino apparently did not show up to work. And at this point, we really have no idea if he will be back at work on Monday, as I was just saying to Chris. And if not, whether he's gone for good or whether anyone else from this Trump-era soap opera will be exiting with him. Who knows? We'll see. And if there's anything we learn over the next hour, and you never know, we may, we will be sure to let you know, I promise. And we don't know exactly where Dan Bongino was. We do have a pretty good sense of why he went MIA. And before we get into all the nitty-gritty here, I know you've probably been following a lot of it, but let me just say this is a very messy, dysfunctional MAGA family drama. It involves hurt feelings and big personalities, and I would say some important lessons about what can happen when you're in a party with a growing addiction to conspiracy theorists and making sure they love you. So I just want to go back to the beginning of the second Trump administration, because it's important here. I mean, the MAGA faithful were eager to finally get their hands on all the secret Jeffrey Epstein files that they had led themselves to believe were purposely being hidden from them, from all the evil people in the Biden administration, I suppose. files that they were convinced would implicate members of the deep state in child sex trafficking and in murdering Epstein to cover it all up. That was the theory, right? And one of the people Trump appointed to a major role in the FBI was this guy.
Hear about this Jeffrey Epstein thing? That apparently 170 plus people on his client list may be outed in the coming days. I can't wait for that. I've already told you the Epstein story. Let's just say a friend who knows about something, if you've heard the story, was on the plane with Clinton with the Epstein thing, and he said, I'm out of here, Daddy-O. I told that story quite a few times, so I know a lot about this story. There are a lot of people who know old Jeff. A lot of people. So it's kind of weird, like this client list is about to come out. Everybody got quiet all of a sudden about the Senate sex tape scandal, and nobody wants to say anything. Quickie poll. You believe some members of Congress and the Senate may have some connection to the Epstein client list? A simple Y for yes will do. No, if you think, no chance at all. Somebody have something on them? Is that client list going to have some names? Guess we'll see.
So that little hype man for all the conspiracy theories has found himself to be the deputy director of the FBI. Now, just a couple weeks into Trump's new term, back in February, Attorney General Pam Bondi handed out binders labeled the Epstein Files Phase 1. You can see one right on the screen there, nicely labeled with a little cover sheet, all to MAGA influencers at the White House. And she also told Fox News that the Epstein client list was literally sitting on her desk. So conspiracy land had their hopes up. They were pumped. They were finally going to get access to this stuff. Then that leads us to this week, when it all fell apart. When Bondi's office released a memo stating that Epstein had killed himself in his prison cell and that his long-awaited, much-rumored client list did not exist, effectively shutting the case down. That memo, to say the least, was not received well by MAGA world and prompted a good portion of Trump supporters to basically lose their minds.
I said Epstein. Like, where did this guy go? Where did that whole case go? Where did all the files go? They just went nowhere? No one even believes that.
Do you buy this story from the Justice Department? I do not.
It's almost like the Justice Department doesn't want us talking about Jeffrey Epstein anymore.
So we're stupid.
Yeah. we're the idiots, guys. Just to let you know, we're wasting time. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. That is, like, in all seriousness, that is, I think, what is enraging people right now is it's insulting our intelligence. Like, obviously, the intelligence community is trying to cover it up. Obviously, the Trump administration is trying to cover up. Something changed because they ran on this idea of exposing it all.
So now, by coming in and being part of the cover-up, the Trump administration has become part of it. I mean, it's just you cannot see it any other way. I mean, I'm physically gonna puke probably right now. My mouth is watering right now because I have integrity.
I mean, that performance. My mouth is watering because I have integrity. Although I did love the actual tinfoil hats while they were talking about conspiracy theories in the clip right before that. That aside. Now, what is pretty clear from that is that Trump's MAGA base is looking for someone to blame. And that has led to some pretty juvenile, childish infighting by some of the most juvenile and childish members of the Trump administration, including a reportedly heated meeting on Wednesday between Attorney General Pam Bondi, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Bongino. Now, here's how the New York Times described it. Ms. Bondi and her allies believe that Mr. Bongino, who parlayed a He-Man image and promotion of conspiracies into a top law enforcement job, planted stories in the conservative news media blaming Ms. Bondi for the backlash after an announcement earlier this week that the Epstein case would be closed, according to officials close to the situation. Now, the New York Times goes on to say that an irate Ms. Bondi accused Mr. Bongino of leaking information to the news media in the presence of the FBI Director Kash Patel, the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and one of her deputies, Taylor Budowich. Mr. Bongino denied it, they said. Now, this is not the most important part of the story, but I will just pause here for a moment because a personal feud between the FBI director, the FBI deputy director, and the attorney general that is so intense it warrants a peacemaking meeting hosted by the White House chief of staff, who has a lot on her plate. Well, this may be a first, and I've worked in 2 administrations, but this may be a first. Now, according to a bunch of reporting, both Patel and Bongino have been frustrated with Bondi for a while now. In the Epstein case, Bongino felt that Bondi had overpromised and underdelivered, which, to be fair, I guess she kind of did. I mean, she was definitely hyping the revelations up before saying nothing to see here. But behind the scenes, Patel and Bongino may have been more agreeable than they claim. Bondi's deputy at the Justice Department, Trump's former defense attorney Todd Blanche, said in a social media post, "I worked closely with Patel and Bongino on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein Files. All of us signed off on the contents of the memo and the conclusions stated in the memo." And also, a source familiar with Bondi and Blanche's thinking told NBC News that all of them were on the same page on this all along until the criticism started to come in.
So let's bring in politics reporter for Semaphore, Dave Weigel, and NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian. Good to have you both.
Thank you guys so much for being with us. Dave, let me begin with you. You talk about why MAGA can't move on from Jeffrey Epstein. I will say there have been a lot of questions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. We started asking questions on the show in 2017, 2018, saying, wait, why is this guy walking around Palm Beach? Why did he get a sweetheart deal from a guy who, eventually became Secretary of Labor? Like, what's going on here? Because none of it made sense back before they filed charges against him again. And a lot of depositions never taken. So this isn't just something that has just now come up, and it's not like a lot of MAGA influencers have been crazy for asking these questions for the past several years. That being said, now that the very same people that said that Biden and Merrick Garland were covering things up are now saying that it is Donald Trump and Pam Bondi that are covering things up. Talk about why this issue is so important. And David French wrote a little bit about this over the weekend. Why is this issue so important to the MAGA base?
Steve Bannon explained it pretty well in the clip that you showed from the Turning Point conference. And this was a theme. You saw the conference split between people who work for Trump or running for office who didn't talk about this and every other influencer who did. And the Bannon perspective, which is widely shared, is that there is a deep state that, if it could cover this up, can cover up who knows how many crimes against Donald Trump, crimes against the American people. There must be something hidden in the Epstein record that would embarrass, much like the Church Commission 50 years ago, I should say, embarrass the security state. There must be that material in the Epstein files, TBD, unproven so far. The other part of it is that from the people who were booing in that audience is a real belief that there are people walking, you were talking about Epstein walking down Palm Beach, people like that walking free right now who committed terrible crimes that have not been exposed, and based on what happened here, would never be exposed. And so I would say that the anger is being redirected by these influencers a little bit away from Trump towards Pam Bondi. You saw it in that Megyn Kelly clip. A theme there, and in our reporting, Shelby Talcott's reporting Axios back this up, is that Bongino and to a lesser extent Patel are seen as the people who were pushing from the outside even more than Trump was for 4 years that this need to be released. That Bondi can't be trusted because she's a glory hog, and Kelly the way that Kelly was putting it. But it comes from these two fears: one, that there are real crimes people got away with; two, is that if you expose those real crimes, think of the temples that can crumble in front of Donald Trump. Why don't they want to do that? That's the question the base has.
So the Wall Street Journal editorial board has a piece on this entitled "Now Trump Says Forget Jeffrey Epstein," and it reads in part, quote, "Donald Trump has traded in conspiracy stories for years. Barack Obama was born in Kenya. Ted Cruz's father had a link to JFK's killer. The 2020 election was stolen. Migrants are barbecuing people's pets." He seems to think this is good show business with appeal in certain niches of fragmented culture. Yet now he's upset that the Jeffrey Epstein theories he fanned are proving hard to tamp down. Mr. Trump lamented online on Saturday that his administration is taking heat over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years, it's Epstein, over and over again. His advisors are suggesting this was a snipe hunt. But the MAGA base is in furious disbelief since the same people pledged to catch some snipe. Maybe podcast provocateurs think it's fun to spin joking, not joking, yarns about Taylor Swift rigging the Super Bowl to help President Biden. What about the truth? By the way, Mr. Trump now says the Epstein Führer can't distract Ms. Bondi from the real conspiracy. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she is looking into as AG and much more.
So, Sam Stein, obviously the Wall Street Journal editorial page, Rupert Murdoch's newspaper, following along a sort of a mainstream version of what we heard this past weekend. Live by the sword, die by the sword as far as conspiracy theories go.
Yeah, and there's something kind of delicious about this, I guess, if you put aside the horrific crimes, right? Which is that this is the chief conspiracist, and now he's being eaten alive by the conspiracy world that he helped fan. And then, of course, to get out of this, people are just creating even grander conspiracies. So Dave's right. One of the things that my colleague Will Summers has been noticing is that on the right, the new conspiracy is that the deep state, a ring of well-connected pedophiles, is now even more powerful than Donald Trump, and therefore he's the victim of this. And it's just, you keep amping up the conspiracy until it eventually just overtakes you. And so you sit back and you watch this, and I guess for Ken, the question for you though is, there are real world players here, not just conspiracists. In this case, there's Jan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, and all of them have, to a degree, fanned this conspiracy. So all of them are, of course, now dealing with the fallout from it. But now there's this kind of turf warfare that's happening, and Joe hit on the question that I have, which is, what is it about, actually? Because they all, in theory, work under Bondi, and they all work under Trump. The actual letter that was put out to Axios, which spurred all this stuff, was directed from both the DOJ and the FBI. They're all saying the same thing in reality. So what is the actual turf war here about? Is it, as Megyn Kelly said, that Pam Bondi's just on TV too much? Because certainly Pam Bondi's made promises, but so have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino.
Yeah, that's right, Sam. Good morning. You asked a very fundamental question here. Here's my understanding from talking to people behind the scenes, that everyone, Bongino, Patel, Bondi, and Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, were all on the same page in crafting that statement. It was based on the fruits of a Justice Department review of the files. And to answer your question, Joe, there are lots of files. There is no client list. And by the way, we've been reporting that for years. People who've covered this investigation, Tom Winter in New York, has been told that by investigators. What's in the files are a lot of pictures of victims, a lot of grand jury information, a lot of unfounded allegations that career prosecutors and FBI agents cannot in good conscience recommend be released. And they convinced all these people who have been engaged in these conspiracy theories for years to do that, which was remarkable when you think about it. But then after a few days after that statement was issued last week, Bongino started to see this horrible reaction from his base. These are the people that made him rich as a podcaster. And apparently he had moments of doubt. Now, you're hearing different things, whether he is upset with Bondi because she stoked the conspiracy theories as he did, or whether it's that he just has decided he can't stand by this story anymore. It's not clear. We don't know Bongino's motivations here, but there was a meeting last week where he had a confrontation with Pam Bondi, where Bondi and Blanche accused him of leaking a story that tried to make them look bad over this, and he blew up and he didn't show up to work on Friday. Now, over the weekend, what we saw is efforts by people in MAGA world to try to mend these fences, including Julie Kelly, who you guys mentioned, and a guy named Mike Davis, who's sort of kind of an operator behind the scenes, very close to the Justice Department and advises the White House. And he is trying to be the voice of reason here. And he's got detailed threads on X explaining what's in these files and why they can't be released. It's just so incredible for me to see this. These are people who spent years telling their base that senior officials who swore to uphold the Constitution are routinely lying to them and can't be trusted. And now those same people are turning on the folks in power, Donald Trump and the people around him, guys.
So I want to, Ken, I want to underline something that you said just to make sure that, because there's a lot of stuff coming at us here, but I want to underline something that you said. That you say both your reporting, Tom Winter's reporting, and other people's reporting at NBC News has confirmed over the years. And you're saying that your reporting, NBC's reporting, is that actually the administration now is correct, that there is no client list, there is no smoking gun out there. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, that's right, Joe. And I know it's hard for a lot of people to believe. And obviously, there have been huge questions about this case from the beginning. And you mentioned it. The origins of this in Florida suggested that initially Epstein used his power and influence to get away with it, essentially. But after there was a lot of good journalism by the Miami Herald and others, the federal government came in and did a comprehensive investigation. And look, I mean, obviously there's issues with the evidence here. So I'm not saying that there aren't photos of other people potentially exploiting children. That may exist, but everybody who was prosecutable in this case was prosecuted. That's our understanding. And there may be unfounded allegations in those files where somebody called the FBI and said a celebrity, engaged in sexual misconduct. They can't release that without evidence. That would ruin that person's life. So the idea that you could just unleash this raw file information on a child exploitation case to the public just never was realistic. But to your point, that's not what Pam Bondi initially told the public. That's not what Dan Bongino said. That's not what Kash Patel said. And now they're reaping the whirlwind.
All right, NBC's Ken Delaney, and thank you so much. Dave Weigel, where do you think this goes next?
I do think the focus is going to be on Bondi because of the high-profile role she has taken, not just in describing these documents, but as AG. And this is another point Kelly was making over the weekend, Megyn Kelly. How often have you seen AG go on TV this much to advance, not this administration's line, but to promise something that's on the way? They were learning the reason you don't usually do that, because sometimes you cannot declassify what you think you're going to be able to declassify, or what you said during the campaign you could. So I think the attention is going to be more on her. It's been coming up in this panel, but the story is already being rewritten on the fly to absolve Trump and say that this is not his fault, even though that Fox clip you played earlier, that's one during the campaign that was cut down a bit to make his answer on the original Fox broadcast look more definitive that he was going to release these Epstein files. It would be impossible for the Republican base to be told Donald Trump was not telling the truth about what he was going to do with these files when he got elected. Much easier to say Pam Bondi, a character who showed up at the beginning of the season, is the problem here.
Semaphores Dave Weigel, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. And Jonathan Lemire, you covered the White House, obviously. I'm curious your thoughts about what happens next, and if we're not watching Pam Bondi being set up, as the Grateful Dead would say, like a bowling pin and knocked down. I mean, is she going to be the scapegoat here for years and years of conspiracy theories that ended up not bearing fruit?
It's possible. Now, I'm told by some aides, White House aides over the weekend, that President Trump in his posts on social media Saturday night did really try to defend Bondi. So at least so far, he has her back. But that could change. If this story doesn't go away, it is possible that she would be the one to be set up to fall. Now, we need to see if John Bongino shows up to work today. He didn't on Friday.
Right.
He stayed silent over the weekend. We did hear from Kash Patel distancing, because there were rumors that both men were going to resign over this. Patel posted on his personal account saying, no, that's not the case. I'm here. We'll see what else he might have to say today. Bongino quiet over the weekend. We'll see what he has to say. I think I'm also told by the White House they're just eager to just try to change the subject of conversation. They're going to try to talk about something else, anything else. We'll get to it in a minute. There might be some Ukraine-Russia news today. There'll be other topics of conversation that I think this White House is going to try to push forward to move past this. But if the weekend's any evidence, I think there's going to be at least some parts of the MAGA base that are not going to so easily let go of something they've been promised for years.
Why do you say they did not do that about the prison cell video? I mean, I know there's a missing minute before midnight, and now there's a report out that the video itself has been, I don't want to say manipulated, which makes it sound nefarious, but that changes were made to it prior to it being released. Dan admitted on Fox and Friends that they were cleaning it up so that it was more easy to see. And that minute before midnight, I think his defenders would say, what kind of a ninja could get in and out of the cell in a minute and commit this murder? Like, if you believe that, you know, I got a spaceship I want to sell you. But I think there are people like Julie K. Brown who say, like, her response to all that was, you're debating what happened at a Starbucks in Austin instead of talking about JFK getting shot in the head in Dallas. Her point has been that video doesn't show Epstein's cell. It shows a common area down the hallway from Epstein's cell. And we have no idea what prisoners may have had access to Epstein, what deal may have been struck with them, how easy it was for them to get to him. Even in his cell alone, if you want to argue there was that just allowing him to commit suicide was what was done as opposed to actual murder. He was given 2 mattresses when most people had 1. He was given extra linens when that was forbidden. A couple weeks after he had tried to kill himself. So there's a couple of theories abounding, but I'm curious why you think Dan didn't live up to the promise on the tape.
Well, I mean, he said both he and Patel said that we would be getting the original prison video. I mean, the exact quote from Patel was, "We're going to give the original Epstein prison video, so you don't think there were any shenanigans." You know, I was joking with a friend of mine. I was like, one of the most endearing quality of Republicans is that they're such bad liars. You know, the Democrats are really good at it, but this is clear misinformation. You know, you can see in the metadata that the video was assembled from 2 source clips, saved multiple times, exported and uploaded to the Department of Justice's website. You can see this both in the Wired report, also CoffeeZilla, a really underrated podcaster, did a really incredible investigation of it. Moreover, it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't actually dispel suspicions in any way. It contradicts the previous assertion that all the inmates were in their cells by 8 p.m. Now, that was the previous assertion. The new DOJ memo says Epstein was out of his cell around 10:40 p.m., which is consistent with a distant orange image in the footage that appears near the staircase to the cell block. But what's still unexplained is why the prison guards failed to complete their mandatory rounds and inmate counts that night, and then why they falsified their statements and records by claiming they had. So there's just too many. I mean, the other thing was that we also saw this huge escalation. In 2019, the DOJ said that the Epstein indictment referred to dozens of victims. Now they say it's 1,000 victims. That's the memo that the Trump administration just put out. So there was 1,000 victims. So there's just so many missing. I mean,
and Michael, just to go back, we talked about this in hour 1. We pulled up the old DOJ documents from right around the time Epstein cut that sweetheart plea deal in 2008. And in one of the related documents in settling a civil case with the victims, the DOJ is on record as admitting he had approximately 30 victims as of 2008 from all around the country. So in 2008, it was 30. And then he cut a deal. And from 2008 to 2019, when he died, he amassed another 970 victims?
Obviously not, right? I mean, that was the part of the sweetheart deal was to cover up the full scale of the operation. I mean, I've heard it. There's a sort of a story going around now that this is all sort of a conspiracy theory. That we don't know. What they got. I mean, this is the Miami Herald in 2019 reported that FBI agents found a cache of thick black binders, all labeled with names that contain hundreds of naked or semi-naked photographs on CDs that Epstein stored in various places. The picture that Bondi was sort of presenting was, well, he just had some child porn that he had downloaded on his laptop. That is just absolutely contradicted by all of the court cases, by what's been reported. The intelligence community ties are amazing. I mean,
Let's
the
talk about that.
CIA
So I
director,
don't think you got to listen to my discussion with Ben, but
Okay.
Ben does not believe, from the sound of it, that he was an intelligence agent or asset, though we agreed asset is a lesser charged term than agent. But still, for my purposes, I don't care because I think the government would have an interest in protecting him under either label. And he doesn't put much stock into the reports about Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney handling the case for the feds when they went after Epstein in 07, 08. Because the best thing we have against Acosta is a hearsay statement reported by Vicky Ward in the Daily Beast in 2019, in which she claimed that a Trump transition team official had told her that when they went to Acosta, when they were considering him for labor secretary, he said, this isn't going to come back to haunt us because Epstein was, I don't want to say
belonged to intelligence.
Yeah, I don't want to have the wrong language, but I do have it written down in front of me that he, quote, belongs to intelligence and that he is, quote, above my pay grade. I was told he was above my pay grade and that he was, that he, quote, belonged to intelligence, and it told me to move off of the case, which, I mean, frankly, I believe that. And I know many people don't, because then later Acosta gave that smarmy little on-camera statement at a 2019 presser when he was in trouble. He was about to resign because he was part of the Trump administration. Then Epstein died and all hell broke loose and he was on his heels. And now he's like, oh, maybe you shouldn't believe everything you read in the press, is essentially what he said. But then when he got interviewed by the Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility, he reportedly behind closed doors said, it's not true that I said that to the Trump transition team.
Yeah, I mean, if that were all it was, but we also have, I think you did mention to Ben, I heard the last part of it, Ari Ben-Manash, the former high-ranking Israeli intelligence officer, who says
he was his handler.
Yeah, he said he introduced Epstein to Israeli intelligence and that the higher-ups approved of Epstein, one of whom was the former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who was also the head of Israeli military intelligence. So,
and how many times did Ehud Barak stay at Jeffrey Epstein's house?
I mean, what we report is that Epstein had planned 36 meetings with Barak I'm not sure how many of those meetings actually happened, but I mean, that's a huge number of meetings. Yeah. I mean, the former CIA director the former CIA director under Biden, Bill Burns, has already been, the Wall Street Journal reported that he had 3 unexplained meetings. So, I mean, you kind of look at it, it looks like there was a sex blackmail operation being operated on U.S. soil that the CIA knew about. I mean, I just kind of think it's important for people to remember, too, that like honeypots or sex blackmail operations, we know that the CIA used those it starts in the 1960s. According to Whitney Webb's reporting, the CIA actually got the idea for them or learned how to do them from the mafia. But, 1975, the CIA operated love traps in New York City and San Francisco where foreign diplomats were lured by prostitutes in the pay of the CIA. They used one-way mirrors to film the sexual adventures. I'm quoting from Whitney Webb's 2-volume book, One Nation Under Blackmail. So it's certainly not outlandish that was what was going on. What was going on is what it appears to have been, which was a sex blackmail operation operated by intelligence. And that's very serious, obviously, because we have a democracy that depends on the idea that we're electing people who are loyal to the citizens and not to some secret intelligence agencies.
Well, let me say this. So Ben said that he, after Naftali Bennett put out this statement today saying he was never a Mossad agent, which I have to say I credit not even a little, not even remotely. I don't believe him. I don't actively disbelieve him either, but I don't put any of what would Naftali Bennett say? What would Ehud Barak say? Of course they're going to say no. So it's like, okay, fine, I get. But anyway, Ben said he reached out to Naftali Bennett's office and that they told him, for what it's worth, that they haven't conducted any sort of spying operation on U.S. soil since 1987. I also don't believe that. And what's making me uncomfortable, Michael, is that I'm just trying to lay out the facts, and I see you doing the same. Tucker's saying what his opinion is, which is not outside of the mainstream at all, that he thinks Epstein worked for Mossad or was somehow an asset to them. But this immediately, even if you're as staunch a defender of Israel in general, I haven't defended all the way they've conducted this war, but in general, their right to defend themselves after the horrific attack of 10/7, and of American Jews who are facing overwhelming discrimination on college campuses. Even if you're in my position, you get lunatics out there who accuse you of being like anti-Semitic because you are exploring this theory, which is such utter bullshit. And honestly, like, I will just say this for the record. If you think that those kind of smears are going to stop me from reporting, you haven't been paying attention to my career at all. If anything, when you accuse me of shit like that, I will triple, and quadruple down. It tells me that I'm onto something. Nice try, but you've chosen the wrong person. You know, and I can hear Tucker's frustration when they do this to him. He's much more controversial than I am because he's interviewing the president of Iran and things like I'm like I've been a defender of Israel. So people who say I'm not can fuck off. They don't know me at all. I'm allowed to figure out what Jeffrey Epstein's actual connections were. And if that leads me to our government or Israel's, too bad. Your thoughts?
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, but we come to the exact same conclusion. I think, first of all, we don't want any foreign intelligence. We don't want any sex blackmail operations operated by intelligence. We certainly don't want any foreign intelligence, whether it's France or Germany or Israel or anybody else. I think the context is important here. I mean, I think if you're a strong defender of Israel right now, this is a difficult time. You have to remember, a majority of Americans currently have an unfavorable view of Israel, and the share of Americans with a very unfavorable view nearly doubled between 2022 and 2025. Now, among Republicans ages 18 to 49, which was that audience that you were with on Friday night at Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA, 50% hold negative views of Israel, up from 35% in 2022. So I don't think that you're going to deal with that problem by trying to cancel, as you said, people that are really allies of Israel, defend the right of Israel to defend itself. My co-author, by the way, the lead author of the piece that we just published, daughter of an Israeli, certainly Israelis have no hesitation about criticizing the Israeli government. It just appears to be a kind of, I mean, it's sad to see, because I do see some people that engage in that idea that any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. I see some of those are people that were actually very good on this issue of cancel culture and kind of the woke reign of terror over the last 12 years. So no, I absolutely share your view.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898 and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
There is major turmoil inside the Justice Department tonight over the handling of files in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Sources tell ABC News there was a fiery confrontation between Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, and that Bongino has told allies he may resign. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, turmoil at the top levels of the Justice Department. Sources tell ABC News of a fiery confrontation between Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino and Attorney General Pam Bondi over the department's handling of the investigation into sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Sources tell us Bongino did not come to work today and has told allies he may resign. For years, Bongino, a former podcast host, and his boss, FBI Director Kash Patel, stoked conspiracy theories over Epstein's death, insisting shadowy forces within the government engaged in a massive cover-up.
Folks, you're going to see a lot of names on that. The Epstein client list, I believe, based on what I've heard from sources and the story I just told you, basically, is going to rock the political world. There's a reason they're hiding it.
Attorney General Bondi promised to deliver answers.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
But this week, DOJ released a memo saying there's actually no client list at all. Bondi asked to explain.
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
DOJ also said Epstein did in fact die by suicide and that there was no credible evidence found that he blackmailed prominent individuals, and declared it would not be releasing any more information about the case. President Trump on Tuesday tried to change the subject.
Are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
All week long, growing outrage from some of Trump's top supporters who were counting on the release of the Epstein Files and are now demanding answers.
Lindsay, tonight the future of the FBI's second in command is uncertain. But today, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche weighing in on the record saying Bongino signed off on DOJ's conclusions on the Epstein Files, posting the suggestion by anyone that there was any daylight between the FBI leadership and DOJ leadership on the memo's composition and release is patently false. Lindsay?
Pierre Thomas for us. Thank you.
Okay, let's bring in the big man, Bill O'Reilly. Bill, thank you for joining us. Good to see you.
You're welcome.
Let's start with the easy one, and then we'll get to what we were just hearing from Swalwell about what we're seeing on the left, which is unlike anything I've ever heard from the Democratic Party in my life. The Epstein thing. I think that this is a hoisted on your own petard. I don't think it's a big value situation because I never believed any of the conspiratorial talk. But the president is not well served by the people around him on this one. I don't think he really cares about Epstein one way or the other, and I don't believe there's anything in the files that kills him. But the people around him botched this, Bill, because they fed all these people this conspiracy fodder about this, and then Bondi 1 minute says it's on her desk, the next minute there's nothing to it. Kash Patel and Bongino, who made such a market in the conspiracy, all of a sudden say it's not true. It's a terrible look for the administration. What's your take?
Well, I think President Trump could correct it anytime he wants to correct it. And that's the question is, I don't know why he doesn't. So all you got to do is say to the Attorney General, you're going to hold a press conference. You're going to tell him generally what we've learned about the Epstein case in a very methodical way. You'll answer some questions. You're not to mention any names because that could destroy people. I talked to President Trump man to man, eye to eye, on St. Patrick's Day about this and the Kennedy files and the King files. It was all one conversation. And he said, and I agree, there are a lot of names associated with Epstein that had nothing to do with Epstein's conduct. They maybe had lunch with him or maybe had some correspondence for one thing or another. If that name gets out, those people are destroyed because there's not going to be any context. Media doesn't care about context. So you can't do that. You can't destroy human beings by putting out the files, whatever they may be. But you certainly can have Attorney General Bondi say, this is what we know. And, you know, we're going to protect the innocent. And he's a heinous individual. in that press conference, sitting next to Pam Bondi, should be Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and Joe Biden, who had this material for 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Biden had it. Yeah, you don't hear that from the left, do you? No.
No, listen,
Now,
what you do here, which I agree with, is if Merrick Garland had stuff on Trump that's in there, he would have given it to him. Now, I have to say something. There's a point of clarification. Oh, 100%. But there's a point of clarification here. People are going to hear your explanation, and they may think, oh, yeah, he wants to protect all his buddies because they were scumbags who were in the... No, that's not the point. It's the opposite point. I don't believe there is a client list. I think Bondi made a mistake when she suggested they had a client list. I don't think Epstein had anything like that. I think they have videos where he is doing disgusting things with people, but they're none of the people that people are headhunting for. And the other point is something that people will never give the president credit for, maybe me among them. But there is no client list. And if you put people's names out, they are going to sue the government, and they are going to win, because they are going to show that the government had reason to know that there was nothing felonious in their relationship with Epstein, and they put out information that was defamatory anyway. And that's the reason not to do it. You're going to ruin people's lives who had nothing to do with the behavior.
Well,
but when people hear it, it sounds like a cover-up.
Trump and I were talking about unintended consequences, not legalities. And I agree with him, but this is not a difficult thing to do, shouldn't be anyway, for Ms. Bondi. And then you could find Merrick Garland's probably at a Club Med somewhere in the Caribbean, just get him out. And
he won't come on, but it's a good point.
Now, you made a couple of mistakes earlier that I'm going to correct in a gentle way, because that's, of course, who I am. Number one, I don't have any buddies to protect, so anybody who would say that would be totally insane. Number two, we have seen this kind of hatred on the left before, and it happened during the Vietnam War, that you had a radical element in the Democratic Party that was supporting the Black Panthers, for example, that were calling for murder. You had Jane Fonda sitting on an anti-aircraft gun in North Vietnam while the war was going on. That's about as extreme as you get. So this has happened before. But I don't believe that most Democrats buy into this at all. I think Murphy is irresponsible in Connecticut. I think he's a loon. I don't respect him at all. Swalwell, I do respect. I don't think he's a loon. I think he understands what's happening. But remember this, Cuomo. You get headlines by being the bomb thrower. That gets you attention. But this has happened before in our history. There's no doubt about it. But now we're in a position where the Trump administration is winning. That may end tomorrow, but it's winning. Got the big bill, got the Iranian diminishment. It's winning. And that is driving people insane on the left.
Look, I think there is a part of that. I just think that there are a lot of opportunities for Democrats to show that they would have better remedies for what is pissing people off about affordability and other inequities in the society. The real ones
I don't
did.
believe most
Bill, my father
Democrats
did.
I don't believe most Democrats think that Trump is responsible for the Guadalupe River. I just don't. I think it's 10%.
Oh, no, I agree with you.
And a lot of them
I agree with you.
A lot of them
agree
are
with
on
you, but
MSNBC because they make money doing that.
But that's how you make it. But that's how you make it. And that's why they're doing it. I agree with you about the ratio. And they know it's poor form. They know it's poor form. Like I made the joke about Murphy. It's like going to a funeral for a guy who died of a heart attack and talking about his diet. It's not the right time.
And consumption. But there are
and
bad,
you're only doing it.
There are bad hombres on the Hill.
Yeah.
There are bad.
There's no question.
Let me say a little personal thing here, Kwame. You ready? You okay? You ready for the personal thing?
Yeah, I'm so far.
So Saturday night, I one of the few parties that I'm invited to because people don't like me. Your brother was there. I had a nice conversation about you weightlifting, and I said to him, "Governor, do you lift those weights? Are you?" I don't think he does. And then I sat right behind Senator Schumer, the most powerful Democrat in the country by title. Okay, He's finished. I'm telling you, the man, I was watching him. He didn't want to talk to me, of course. Once he didn't stick up for the Jewish students at Columbia, I just laced him. I mean, I just annihilated Schumer on WABC.
Been quiet
radio.
about the attacks
And
on the
I was
ICE
right.
officers also.
Right. Well, he's through. And he knows Ocasio-Cortez is going to beat him in a primary if she chooses to run. But
Beat him
anyway,
like an egg.
I'm at this place, and I'm looking at what was once the most powerful Democrats in the country. It has collapsed. And that is the problem with the Democratic Party right now. No leadership at all.
And the vacuum is being filled with animosity, with grievance, with aggression.
Loons.
AOC and Bernie
Loons.
run on the same oligarchy lines that the terrorists going after the ICE guys used. And I'm not blaming AOC and Bernie, but I'll tell you what I do blame them for, not saying anything about it.
Why not?
Right now they should be outspoken.
Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez are dangerous people, just like Mandani is dangerous. These are dangerous people. They want to blow the whole country up. Talk about working people getting it right between the eyes. I've researched this Mandani, who may be the next New York mayor. He's doing a Fidel Castro playbook almost word for word. You look back in Castro and what he was saying in 1958, Mandami's read it because he's spouting the same stuff. It's unbelievable.
But look, I don't cover the race because Andrew was in it. But what I'm saying is, Mamdani, I wouldn't discount. I wouldn't discount the grievance. What he is marshaling with AOC, with Bernie, is real. Just as it was on the MAGA side, these people are disaffected and they're angry. Well, it's dangerous if their legitimate outrage doesn't find recourse. Then it gets dangerous. But I felt the same way about what Trump did with his populist movement in the beginning.
Those people are dangerous. Sanders is a communist. He wants to blow up the capitalistic system. And Ocasio-Cortez doesn't even know what communism is, I'll submit to you. She would never sit for an interview with you or me because it would last about 2 minutes and she'd be weeping. All right? No frame of reference, doesn't understand
I may be
history,
weeping. She may punch me in the face.
Doesn't know how to run anything. Well, I predict she'll wind up on a View someday. That's where she'll be, okay? But, and I know I'm being harsh here, but I have to tell the truth. These are dangerous people. There's no rationalization for what they're espousing. Seizure of private property, dismantlement of the country's economic system, which provides more opportunity than any other country on earth. They want to blow it up. They're dangerous people.
I think that it's about, here's what I want to be careful about. And Bill, as always, I thank you for being here. And I know you tried to kill me with my brother. You two were overheard, and you both matched your invective towards me. You were both very nasty, and if I had been there, I would have clapped you together like cymbals.
We were making fun of you. Gently.
Yeah, I know.
Gently.
No, it wasn't gentle. It was overheard, and you two deserve each other. But let me say this.
It was overheard by who? Give me a name.
No.
Don't give me an anonymous source. Give me a name.
Lolly told me. Lolly told me.
Okay.
Lolly told me.
Didn't. She was on the other side
Lolly
of the
told
room.
me. Lolly told me. Big mouth. But hold on. This is the only thing I want to be careful about. Is the people, the working people who voted for Trump are right to be desperate for something better. The working people that came out in Brooklyn and in Queens in this primary are also right to feel desperate and to want something better. It's what is being sold to them as a remedy that I believe can get very dangerous very fast. And I think it's a really important distinction to make. It's how we had the deplorables issue. I've said from the beginning, not everyone who backs President Trump is a bigot. It's just that he did happen to have a lot of bigots in the beginning who were backing him. This is the same thing. They're not all whack jobs on the left. They're not all going to attack ICE agents. But there are extremists in those ranks now. And we're going to live
absolutely, and that's why the ICE people And that's why the ICE people are protecting their families with masks.
Yeah,
One more,
listen, I
just
see
a
it.
quick plug.
Go ahead.
I am like dominating YouTube now. I don't even know how it happens. I don't even know how to get on YouTube. But apparently my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bill O'Reilly, is exploding. Now, one of the reasons is that I'm taking topics that I don't do on the No Spin News, I don't do on News Nation, and I do about 12 minutes. And the topic this week fits right into what you're asking. The disenchantment of people who are not succeeding in America. But they are exploiting this, and they want to create, they being the radical left, a welfare state. Exceedingly dangerous. So check it out on YouTube. Cuomo, you'll be a better man for it.
I blocked you. Bill O'Reilly, thank you for being on. As always, appreciate you.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.
You did trash me with my brother, though. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
We have a lot to get to this Monday, but we start with the MAGA revolt over the Jeffrey Epstein case, one that even the president can't seem to control. It hasn't stopped him from defending his attorney general, Pam Bondi, and trying to convince his own base there's no there there. At one point, chastising them for wasting time and energy on something, quote, nobody cares about. But judging by the reaction at a weekend gathering of young conservatives, that is absolutely not the case.
Make some noise if you care about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Raise your hand if it matters a lot to you. Raise your hand. So every hand of 7,000 people.
Everybody cares.
A lot. I said a lot. Every hand.
How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
I want to bring in NBC senior national politics reporters Jonathan Allen and Matt Dixon. Matt was at that summit over the weekend. Also with us, NBC senior justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian and Matthew Dowd, an MSNBC senior political analyst. Okay, Matt, you wrote that Trump supporters have gone along with him really through every scandal and policy shift. When he made a decision, his base backed him. But the Epstein issue is challenging this alliance like never before. And I said you were at the summit. I know you spoke to conservatives there. Help folks understand why they care so much about this issue specifically.
Well, it's an issue that Trump and Republicans who support him have talked about for a very long time. Epstein was a campaign trail issue. He built a lot of intensity around this particular issue. And even more recently, even after 2024, where it came up, Attorney General Bondi saying that she had the files, a client list on her desk. They did a binder Epstein evidence review with social media influencers. So that really builds a lot of trust and a lot of intensity with his political base on this issue. And the underlying allegations are so stunning and stark that people really feel it in their gut. So when functionally this weekend in Tampa, the rug was kind of pulled out from underneath them, a lot of people were left both kind of angry and confused. There's concerns about transparency and the direction Trump is going. And you had said it earlier in the open, usually in these moments, Trump has a good ability to bring his base back in. Certainly in Tampa, it felt like it's going to be harder to do that with this one. The intensity was palpable and people were quite angry.
Wow. So, Matthew, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and then the far-right podcaster, Benny Johnson, all tried to just lay out why this is such a big deal for the base. And Johnson started off by specifically responding to Trump's claim that Democrats are to blame for the Epstein files.
By admitting that the Epstein files are real and have been written and that you've read them and you don't like their contents and they were written by your enemies, doesn't make the most compelling case as far as I'm concerned. Holy moly.
The guy was some weird sex freak who was abusing girls. We knew that. But the fact that the U.S. government, the one that I voted for, refused to take my question seriously and instead said, case closed, shut up, conspiracy theorist, was too much for me. And I don't think the rest of us should be satisfied with that.
It's about transparency. One of the main reasons that we voted Trump in was because we wanted real answers on real stories, and we didn't want to be BS'd anymore with a bunch of nonsense from our government that treated us like a bunch of stooges. Right? Thank you.
So, Matthew, you could argue that this is a monster the Trump administration created, right? Trafficking conspiracy theories and successfully promoting the idea that secrets are being hidden somehow by the deep state. So I wonder what's been more surprising to you, the blowback or the fact that the administration seems to be so surprised by it?
I'm not really surprised by the blowback at all, because once you, as you say, it's like Frankenstein, once you create a monster and release it, then you shouldn't be surprised when it starts destroying the village. So I'm not surprised about the blowback. I'm surprised about how Trump and others around him made this an issue to begin with, knowing the vulnerability that Donald Trump has related to Jeffrey Epstein. That's what's fascinating to me. They created this issue and they drummed this up with some knowledge that Donald Trump has pictures with him, has videos with him, and Jeffrey Epstein has referred to Donald Trump as one of his best friends in the course of this. And then now all of a sudden they want to shut this down, and they're surprised people think there may be something here with how Donald Trump's led his life and the relationship he had with Jeffrey Epstein. But I think this is sort of one of these things when Donald Trump's voters don't have a rational connection to why they didn't vote because of some 10 policy issues. They didn't vote. They have an emotional connection to Donald Trump, and they had an emotional connection to this Jeffrey Epstein issue. And a rational argument is not going to break an emotional connection.
So you've been reporting, Ken, about how this is playing out behind closed doors within the administration. And probably the most fascinating and consequential part of this is the growing rift between Pam Bondi and the FBI Deputy Director, Dan Bongino. So tell us where that stands today.
Yeah, I want to be clear about something up front, though, Chris. What the Justice Department said last week in that statement is consistent with years of NBC News reporting and reporting by other news outlets. There is no secret client list, that there was no blackmail going on, that everyone who was prosecutable in this matter has been prosecuted. That doesn't mean there aren't photos and videos in the file, but there's lots of reasons those can't be released. And so Pam Bondi, Todd Blanchard, deputy, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel, the FBI director, they all got behind that statement. They all decided that after this Justice Department review, they were going to try to nip this thing in the bud. But then after a few days of blowback, Dan Bongino apparently decided that he couldn't take the heat. And on Friday, he didn't show up for work. Well, he still hasn't said anything publicly. Now, yesterday, Trump said that he spoke to Bongino and he seemed to say that everything was fine. Trump also appeared with Pam Bondi in public and appeared to give her the thumbs up. And what I'm told by officials close to the situation is that Trump so far is supporting Bondi, even though a lot of the criticism from MAGA world, because they don't like to criticize the president, has been directed at her. So far, Trump seems to be with her. He's got surrogates out there on X trying to justify what the Justice Department has done. But she herself stoked these conspiracy theories, as you guys have been saying. So did Kash Patel. So did Dan Bongino. This is a really tough genie to put back in the bottle, especially when you consider that the idea that that Democrats are preying on children runs really deep in MAGA world. It goes to the QAnon conspiracy theories. It's something that a lot of people in that world believe and they don't want to let go of.
So, John Allen, what's the level of concern? Are you hearing any level of concern within the White House that this is kind of getting away from them?
I mean, the fact that the president of the United States is going out on social media to basically say there's nothing to see here is a good example or a good indication that there, in fact, is something to see there. But we had a statement from the White House. Let me read that just so folks know what it is. What they said is President Trump has assembled an incredible team of law and order patriots who are committed to making America safe again and restoring the integrity of our criminal justice system. Attorney General Bondi, Director Patel, Deputy Director Bongino, and the countless other heroes of our law enforcement community are dedicated to executing President Trump's agenda of protecting civil rights, safeguarding communities, holding criminals accountable, and defending victims. The work will continue in lockstep and with unprecedented success. I think what's important there is actually that the White House is sending a message to Dan Bongino, to Kash Patel, to anybody else within the Trump orbit, within the administration orbit, that they are expected to fall in line. That it is not about their own social media bases, or in the case of Bongino, a podcast or television base, that him trying to protect his brand by criticizing the president or criticizing Pam Bondi is not something that's going to be tolerated.
So, Matthew, what happens now? Do you think somebody's going to have to be fired? Kind of a sacrificial lamb for the base? How does Donald Trump extricate himself from this?
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's going to fire anybody in this, because I think what looks like is happening is they're in some way protecting Donald Trump. All these others are protecting Donald Trump in some ways. I mean, there's who knows what the real reality of this is, and you never know in the Trump world what's going on. My guess is somebody will leave, mainly out of their own desire to preserve themselves in the course of this, whether it's Bongino or Kash Patel or somebody who wants sort of a life post-Donald Trump in this, because I think they're smart enough to know that Donald Trump cuts his losses pretty dang quick. But I think in this case, they're not going to probably fire anybody. They're definitely not firing Pam Bondi, because who's been a loyal servant to Donald Trump in the course of this. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of the other guys leaves.
Yeah, and Susie Wiles likes Pam Bondi, so there's also that. But Charlie Kirk, as you know, he's the founder of Turning Point USA, told the Washington Post this: "Do I think this is the end of MAGA? No, I've never said that. Do I think the extra 10 to 15% less inclined to vote bros that are trading crypto and wake up at 2 p.m. every day, do I think they're going to be like, screw it? Yeah, that's a huge risk." And here's what Steve Bannon said about what he thinks the possible impact is at the midterms.
For this to go away, you're going to lose 10% of the MAGA movement. If we lose 10% of the MAGA movement right now, we're going to lose 40 seats in 26.
Matthew, is there real political danger for Republicans here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole added thing that keeps adding up, and this is just another issue. It's normally bad in a midterm. Normally things go bad for the incumbent party. We have that the case historically. It normally goes really bad when you have a president with a 41 or 42% job approval number. That's what we have. And then it normally goes really, really bad when you have a president with a low job approval who passes as a signature piece of legislation, his big, beautiful bill, which is not liked by a net more than 20% of the country. I mean, but net almost 60% of the country don't like his signature bill. And then you add all these distracted scandals that are coupled with every time there's some new tariff and people are confused about the chaos and all this. I think all of this begins to add up a very, very detrimental position for the Republicans in the midterm.
That's why we test ideas here with better minds. And I have Stephen A. Smith with me tonight, and I want to get his take on what we're seeing with Epstein and ICE and everything else going on. Happy Friday, and thank you for being here.
Happy Friday. What's going on, big time? How are you?
So, wow, better than I deserve. What do you make of the struggle of ICE versus whatever we want to call this movement on the left that has decided to match ferocity with the right?
I think it's foolish. I think that ultimately it plays right into President Donald Trump's hands, because if you're the left, you may be taking the position, you may think you're taking the moral position, but the reality is on too many occasions we've seen them try to utilize certain issues to foment a level of support, to curry favor with constituents out there who may be undecided, who may be a bit suspect about them. You can call it an evasive tactic on their part, or effort to gain a support that evidently we all see that they've lost, at least to some degree, and they're fighting the good fight on this issue. But the reality is that the election showed us that America has spoken on this particular issues, and while we may not want children being taken away from their parents, separated from their parents and things of that nature, We certainly didn't want open borders where over 12 million people crossed the borders in the United States of America, because we felt that it had a detrimental effect on this country. And so the American voter has spoken about that regard, and what they've said is that the right in their position is closer to a reality that we want in this country than the reality that the left was preaching. And when they send that kind of message, and then your response or your retort thereafter in the aftermath of the election, obviously, is to take this route, where you have a representative or an elected official out of Maryland going all the way to El Salvador to talk to somebody, but there's stuff going on right here at home that he couldn't find the time for. This is the kind of stuff that is fodder for the right, and they're going to use to their advantage any chance they get.
And they're just way too quiet. You want to care about January 6th, you should. But they're being way too quiet about things that they'd be really loud about if you flip the sides. So we're going to take a break. Stephen A. is going to come back with me, and we're going to talk about a story that we do not see the same way. But I want to ask him a question that he should not answer until we come back. Any chance that you would join Andrew Yang and Elon Musk with this new party that they're starting? Don't answer. We'll be right back. All right, I'm back with Stephen A. Smith. Is there a chance that someone like an SAS enterprise would want to be in league with this new party?
If the party put their muscle and their money behind me and took a step back, sure. But I certainly wouldn't be on an even playing field with them, I'll tell you that much, because I don't think they are a winning formula. Andrew Yang, major respect for him. A tech billionaire, somebody very smart, very articulate. I like him as a person, but do I think that he's going to curry favor with the majority of voters? No. Elon Musk, I think his ship has sailed. He had his moment in the sun. Ultimately, he's had a falling out, and obviously in that particular battle, it looks like Trump is winning by a mile. You think about the past, the Ross Perot's of the world, former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz. You look at Ralph Nader. You look at Ross Perot, like I said, and others. A third-party system, a situation like that usually doesn't win. And I think that part of the reason is that the objective for them is to be separate and apart and completely independent of Democrats and Republicans, not understanding that in this two-party system that we have in the United States of America, it is clearly what America has embraced. And I'm not saying that you have to be that always, but you have to show a willingness to do business with both parties in order to be successful in the eyes of the American people. And the reason why they haven't been able to pull it off is because they've been marketing and advertising themselves as a reprieve from what has ailed us as a nation, instead of saying the reprieve would be my ability to ingratiate myself with both parties so we can get things done on a fair and equitable basis that would benefit all Americans, not just one segment of this population.
I respect the analysis. But we don't really have that conversation very often, right? Because we allow ourselves to be distracted by conspiracies and scandals, because it works better, especially when you are really just fighting among fringe factions. So that takes us to one of the granddaddies of all conspiracies, the Epstein lists, the Epstein Files. And Trump bought into it. And he, not that he believed or didn't believe, but he went after that issue, and he surrounded himself with people who trafficked in this. And I don't believe it's going away, but you and I disagree about why it's not going away. You say it's not going away because there is a list.
Okay. I believe it's a list. I don't know, but neither do you. And that's where I'm going with this. I understand, first of all, that you know more than me. Hell, I lean on you for half my knowledge, for crying out loud. So let me not sit up here in front and act like I go in a different direction. I got love and respect for you, my brother. But I think that, over the course of watching folks do business, there's this inclination and there's this desire to say, conspiracy theory, let's stop the nonsense. I'm a more practical brother, my man Chris Cuomo. I'm a more practical brother in this sense. You can't tell me that a sex trafficker, somebody that purportedly engaged in the kind of insidious behavior that this man did, didn't prepare himself in some way for his comeuppance, per se, one day. And that if that day arrived, he wouldn't be in a position to say, if I go down, there's a whole lot of people that's going down with me. I'm not saying that's the truth. That would be irresponsible for me to say. But I also think it's crazy, not irresponsible, but crazy for you or somebody else to say, nonsense. There's no way that happened. We don't know that. I mean, think about the people we've seen Epstein with now. Think about the people we know that he's known. Think about the connections that he has had. Think about some of the proclivities we have learned, black, white, and everything in between, in terms of perverted men having and what have you, in terms of how they engage, the kind of behavior that they engage in. And I'm supposed to sit back here with a straight face and say, absolutely, positively not. There's no way that happened. Nah, Chris Cuomo, you can do that. I'm not doing that. I got an eyebrow raised, and I'm saying to myself, that combined with the 47th president of the United States, that is known for making sure that he does favors for those who skillfully and adroitly ingratiate themselves with him. It could be January 6th insurrectionists. It could be elected officials. It could be business folks. It could be anything. If you tell this man you love him enough, and then you need a favor, you can't rule out the possibility that he might look out for you. I'm not saying he did anything. I'm saying I'm not ruling out the possibility that Trump did favors, that said, you know what, let it go. I'm not ruling.
Welcome back to TMZ Live. The Epstein Files will not stop haunting President Trump. No matter how much he says that he wants people to stop talking about it, it continues. It just persists on Capitol Hill and around the country. So is there a way that he could actually make this go away? We know that he last week urged Pam Bondi to release a portion of the grand jury testimony, which isn't really going to reveal anything.
It's not.
No. But perhaps there is a way he could. And there is someone who's got a suggestion for him, someone who is very connected to this case, as in he represented Jeffrey Epstein. That is famed attorney Alan Dershowitz. And he is joining us now to talk about the Epstein Files and what the president could possibly do. Alan, welcome to TMZ Live.
Thanks for having me. Alan, over the weekend, you said, and it sure made sense to me, that the key to this case is Ghislaine Maxwell, and that Congress should give her some form of use immunity to get her to talk, because you said she has all the secrets. My question to you is, what's in it for her to do that if all she gets is use immunity? What about cutting her a deal with the sentence she currently has?
Well, that should be done. The sentence she currently has is not a sentence that was really imposed on her. It was imposed on the dead Jeffrey Epstein. You don't get 20 years for being an assistant or a secretary, even if there were serious crimes. And she had nothing to do with any alleged trafficking. In any event, she should have her sentence commuted. She should be given total immunity, called before Congress, and she'll tell everything. She knows everything. She made all the reservations. When I had to fly down to represent him in front of the Palm Beach District Attorney's Office or in front of the U.S. Attorney's Office, she's the one who made the arrangements. She knows who was on his plane. She knows who was innocent. If there were any guilty people, she knows who they are. And if you gave her complete immunity and let her out of prison and made a deal with her, this would solve the problem forever. The real problem is that because Jeffrey Epstein is dead, there's no one to hold responsible except her. And so she has borne the brunt of his wrongdoing, even though she was not responsible anywhere near the degree to which he was.
Alan, you know that what we've heard from people, who are clamoring for this file to be released is that they want everyone who was involved in this, anyone who did something criminal and untoward, that they should be held responsible. So what you're suggesting, though, is that they let someone out of prison, the one person who was held accountable, and I hear your point about her sentence being too long, but she was held accountable, and now you're saying release her. I'm not sure how that's going to go over with the public.
No, I agree. It's a difficult decision to make, but she's already served a long period of time. Let me give you an example of what would be found in the file. There's a woman whose name was Sarah Ransom, and she filed an affidavit under oath subject to perjury in which she said that she had in her possession videotapes of Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Richard Branson, and others having sex with 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. She sent emails to that effect to Maureen Callahan of the New York Post. Everybody checked it out. The story didn't check out. It wasn't true. And so she ultimately admitted to the New Yorker that she had committed perjury, essentially, that she had lied, that she had made false statements that got people in trouble. Right now, only her accusations are in public, but the information that shows that she made up the story has been sealed. Indeed, her own affidavit has been sealed. People don't even know that she filed a perjurious affidavit. So I'm in favor of having everything out there. And we're not going to get the whole story unless Ghislaine Maxwell is prepared to testify as to the whole story. And so you got to bite the bullet and you got to say, look, if we really want the whole story out, she served a long prison term already. Let her out of prison, give her total immunity, and she'll have no reason not to testify as to everything. And if there are, in fact, guilty people, let them, in fact, be punished. But if there are falsely accused people, let the false accusers be punished. There has to be justice on all sides of this issue.
So my recon in this case is that the grand jury transcript is not going to provide much information because it's kind of lasered in on very specific crimes and not generally. My recon is also that the Justice Department files is not going to be particularly revealing either. I know from what I'm told is that Trump's name is mentioned more than a few times, nothing untoward there.
That's right.
It seems to me that the real information may come from the various civil cases that were filed against Epstein and Maxwell. You have been privy to a lot of those files. That's my understanding. Am I right?
You're right that that's where the information would be, and that 2 or 3 judges, federal judges, have been the ones who've sealed this information, and they've sealed it primarily in order to protect the victims. But we don't know how many of them are victims and how many of them are perpetrators. How many of them are mixed victims, perpetrators? That is, they may have been victimized and then they victimized others by falsely accusing them for money. This is a very complex picture, a very complex story. And the only way to get to the bottom of it is to reveal all the written information. And that will give you maybe 30 or 40% of the information. The rest will have to come from Ghislaine Maxwell. So make a deal with her. That's the way the criminal justice system generally operates. Let's make a deal. And as Abby Hoffman once said, the only justice in the criminal system takes place. The only justice in the halls of justice take place in the halls when you make deals. And I think it's time for a deal to exchange information from Ghislaine Maxwell for allowing her to complete her sentence in a reasonable period of time.
Do you think she would play ball if all she gets is use immunity?
I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't been in contact with her for years.
This morning, the Trump administration is facing more fallout from their handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Calls growing louder within Congress, for one, for Ghislaine Maxwell, the longtime Epstein associate who was convicted of child sex trafficking offenses related to the investigation, calling for her to testify about what she knows. Conversation now around that. And now attorney Alan Dershowitz, who was once an attorney for Jeffrey Epstein, says that he believes Maxwell would be willing to testify before Congress if given use immunity.
She knows everything. She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify, and there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information.
Adding to the spectacle now, after that, A source close to Maxwell told CNN that she has not had any discussions about testifying before Congress, and also that Alan Dershowitz has had no contact with her. Joining us right now, CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig for much more on this. Let's start with this piece, and then I want to ask you more about what could be released with all these calls of having more of the investigation released. You are skeptical that Maxwell would agree to testify before Congress. Why?
Yeah, I'm extremely skeptical, Kate, despite whatever Professor Dershowitz says. So first of all, if Ghislaine Maxwell was willing to come clean and testify truthfully, why would she not have done that at any point in the last 4+ years while her prosecution was ongoing? Because had she tried to testify and cooperate at any point during that time, she would have been in position potentially to help herself. Instead, she refused to talk. She went to trial. She got convicted. She got sentenced to 20 years, and she has made no indication of willingness to talk. Also, keep in mind, part of the initial indictment against Ghislaine Maxwell points out that she lied under oath. She was deposed under oath in a civil case, and she outright denied knowing anything about Jeffrey Epstein trafficking minors or her own involvement in trafficking minors. So she's not exactly a bastion of credibility, and I am not going to hold my breath for the day where she takes an oath and testifies truthfully in front of Congress.
I want to read for everyone the full quote from the source close to Ghislaine Maxwell, kind of it seems like batting this down. Here's the quote. While Dershowitz is brilliant, he does not represent Ms. Maxwell and has had no contact with her. There has been no discussion about her testifying before Congress. Her only counsel of record right now is fighting her case before the Supreme Court. On this, what is use immunity? How much protection would it give her if this whole thing would come together, considering that she's clearly fighting the conviction?
Right. So Professor Dershowitz is sort of thinking ahead to the legal chess game that might hypothetically break out if there was some effort by Congress. The way this would work is Congress would subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell. And again, I'm skeptical any of this is going to happen. But Congress would subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell. She then, if she had any kind of decent lawyer, would take the fifth, because even though she's been convicted of sex trafficking of children, there potentially would be other charges that could be brought against her. She could be charged in the state. She would absolutely have a right to invoke the fifth. The counter move to that is what Professor Dershowitz is talking about, where Congress has the ability to immunize somebody, meaning, okay, we're going to force you to testify, but your testimony is not going to be used against you in any future criminal proceeding. So in theory, that could compel her to testify. But again, I think her response would be, too bad. Like, I'm already doing 20 years. Why would I care about a citation for contempt of Congress? And again, why would anyone think Ghislaine Maxwell is suddenly going to come clean and tell the truth now?
Very important perspective. With this request, though, now from the Justice Department to now release the grand jury testimony in the Epstein investigation, I mean, how long do you think it will be before this is decided? And once it is decided, how long before things would be released if that is what is decided?
Yeah, so the case is now in the hands of Judge Richard Berman, a federal judge in the Southern District of New York. I appeared in front of him many times. He's a good judge. He's down the middle. He works hard to get it right, and I don't think he will let this drag out too long.
Area. And lots more than this neighborhood, you guys met.
Even if this request is granted, even if the judge says, go ahead and unseal grand jury testimony, that is going to be a sliver of the overall file. Could be important, but it will be a narrow sliver of the overall file. The other thing is, if you actually look at the grand jury secrecy rules, there are some exceptions on the books where you can unseal and make public or give to somebody else part of the record. But none of those apply here. Those all basically say if some party in another lawsuit needs them, if there's a defendant who's been charged elsewhere who needs these documents to make a motion to dismiss. And if you look at DOJ's motion that went in on Friday, they acknowledge that. They say basically, Judge, we understand none of these exceptions really apply, but we're kind of asking you for an all-purpose exception because there's such massive public interest here. So I genuinely don't know what Judge Berman's going to do. Neither outcome would surprise me, but the reality is we're going to see little of the file if he does agree to release it and none if he does not.
As the scandal, the fallout continues over the Epstein scandal, Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell could testify in front of a congressional committee. Maxwell, you may recall, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for carrying out a years-long scheme to groom and facilitate the sexual abuse of underage girls. Well, now a former lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein is pushing for her immunity in exchange for testimony.
She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. And there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information. So I don't see any negative in giving her the kind of use immunity that would compel her to testify.
CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson joining me now. Good to see you, my friend. Practically speaking, should there be some sort of a deal, should she agree to testify here, what more do you anticipate we would learn from Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, Erica, good morning to you. I think this could be extraordinarily significant. The answer to your question is everything. Why do I say that? She's known, certainly, as we see in the pictures there, to be a person who was close to Jeffrey Epstein, to be his girlfriend, to be his enabler, to be whatever it is that people might classify her to be. At the end of the day, though, we know she was there when the deal was made and hand is shook, so to speak. She can tell you the who, what, when, where, how, why, etc. And therefore, I think she would be a wealth of information in the event there was a deal struck and she presented testimony before Congress, Erica.
What about, too, this push for the grand jury testimony and what that would actually reveal, which is far less?
Yes, so I think that's a complete farce. It's disingenuous and it's ridiculous, quite frankly. Why do I say all those things? We have to keep in mind that a grand jury sits and they don't determine guilt or innocence. They just determine two things. Number one, whether there's reasonable cause to believe that a crime was committed. And number two, that the subject of that proceeding committed it. There are 23 grand jurors. A simple majority, that is 12, can vote out an indictment. When you're a prosecutor bringing forth a case before the grand jury, as I have, what you do is you just present enough legally sufficient information to give them an indictment. And that means that you give them bare bones. And as we look at that picture there, and that information is specific as to the defendant, you're not being all-inclusive to present information which the public wants to know with respect to who else might have been involved, what were they doing, where were they, how were they. So it will not give you the breadth of information. I think that that's something that's a shiny object, but it's a shiny object that's a distraction, and it's not fair, I don't think, to the American people, particularly, Erica, when the motion saying, hey, release the grand jury minutes talks about transparency. If you want transparency, guess what? There's a file in the Department of Justice, or is there? Because according to the memo, there's not, after they said there was. But if you want transparency, release that document. That'll tell you what needs to be done. It'll tell you who was where, what was why, who was involved, if anyone. And I think that's the information you need. And you could do it in terms of redacting, that is really blacking out information that would be harmful to any potential victim.
You know, to that point, Joey, is there a broader impact that either you are seeing or that you are concerned you may see when it comes to not just the Department of Justice, but frankly, to legal cases moving forward that may have an outcome that people don't like, right? You don't have to like it or agree with it to have it be a finding. I mean, is there a broader impact here based on what we've seen, the back and forth from the Justice Department?
So there always is, Erica, right? I mean, law is based on precedent, and you have to be careful what you do because it sets a precedent for tomorrow, next week, next year, the year after. But at the end of the day, what courts are about is they're about justice, and why you would release information and a file is about that very issue. If you look at the motion, it's predicated on the standard. Why would you release secret information? Because there's a public imperative, because it fits into the interest of justice, because inquiring minds want to know. And in a democracy, this is not about secrets. This is about doing what's fair, what's adequate, what's appropriate. And you have a number of people who are clamoring for information. So, right, to revert back to the point, why not, according to, right, Mr. Dershowitz, give her use immunity? What is use immunity? Use immunity is anything Ms. Maxwell might say before Congress couldn't be used against her. Any information derived from any statement couldn't be used against her. I think that could be certainly something that's compelling. Last point, Eric, and that's this. Of course, she'll be assailed because she's an interested witness. She's doing 20 years. She's appealing before the Supreme Court. But there's an interesting thing in law, Erica. It's called corroboration. So everything she says, if you vet it, right, whatever you say, is there a text message to support it? Is there an email? Is there surveillance? Is there a photo? Is there a document? Are there flight records? All of that stuff. Are there other witnesses? I think information could be vetted such that you could determine if there's a grain of truth. And if there is, let the truth and justice lie where it may.
Joey Jackson, always appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.